We're going to begin. Welcome to the June 16th, 2021 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And that is a great flag. Thank you so much, Nina. So if we can ask Ms. Vasquez, could you please call the roll, please? I think you were cut off at the beginning. Could you say that again?
Sure. Commissioner Ferris.
Here.
Commissioner Hayek.
Here.
Commissioner Pletcher.
Here.
Chair Lemo.
Here.
Vice Chair Emel is absent.
Thank you. And he did let us know that that was going to be the case. Now, if you could please read the notice for public comments.
This is the time and place for public comments. Registration for public comments was available until the start of the meeting for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole, and all documents for the commission and the official record should be presented to the recording secretary prior to the meeting. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. One individual has requested to speak, and pursuant to Traffic Commission standards, public comment speakers are allowed 2 minutes. For the record, we have not received a written statement under the public comment section. Also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphones when you are not speaking.
Thank you. And so we will now move ahead with our first speaker. Oh, you're on mute. You were muted.
Our sole speaker is Tricia Norvell. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time is up to speak.
Thank you. And if we could remind to, there you go, you've unmuted.
Hello. Actually, I prepared a statement, and when I read it, it was more about 3.5 minutes long. It's not.
So whatever you can do to trim it, we'd appreciate it, please.
Well, you know what I could do? I could just email it.
Whatever you feel is best.
I'm probably going to do that because I'd really like it to be heard in its entirety and not half of it.
Okay, let me just ask.
The,
hold on just 1 second, please, Ms. Norvell. Being that it's not on that subject matter, what is the what are we permitted to do? Being that it's a public comment and we only have one speaker in public comment, not the 16 or 17 on the other matter, can we let public comment? Can you try and trim it to 3 and let's take it from there?
I mean, I could.
Sure.
I mean, sure. It's basically, you know, it's about the line striping options on Bridgegate.
Oh, okay. Is there a reason that it's not in? We usually have any comments on a agenda item under that item.
Okay, I don't know. I'll just email it and that'll be easier. I'll just
Thank
email
you.
it and then we'll take care of it that way.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so then we'll move ahead in our agenda. You'll notice that we have our summary notes of April 21st, 2021 attached. And I believe that is an information item. Is that right, Mr. Mashiko?
Okay, no, I think we're, yeah, that's just information. If you have any comments on it, we'll be glad to take them.
So I imagine you've all had the chance to review that. Are there any comments or questions on our summary notes that are included here? Hearing none, we will then move ahead to our engineer's report, item number 6 on the agenda, which is the Bridgegate Street Road striping proposal, and that will be presented by our senior engineer, Jim Mashiko. Mr. Mashiko, if you could take the floor, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair Lemo. Just want to make sure I'm unmuted at this time. Yes, thank you, Chair Lemo. This item is to consider a roadway striping proposal for Bridgegate Street West, Westlake Boulevard to resolve resident traffic concerns. Here we go. Here's a location map that shows the 3rd-mile long segment of Bridgegate, shown in blue west of Westlake Boulevard. Potrero is to the south, and Triumphal Canyon Road is to the north. Bridgegate is a collector street that has a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. In October of last year, during the pandemic, we measured the daily traffic to be just above 1,500 vehicles per day and a prevailing speed of 37 miles an hour. To the west of Valcroft Avenue, the road narrows and becomes a residential or standard residential street fronted by single unit homes and a posted speed limit of 25 miles an hour. I'll be showing you a few photos of Bridgegate Street as it exists today. The first photo is looking west after entering from Westlake Boulevard. Notice here that the road has no striping and is 46 feet wide. There's ample room for through traffic, bicycle and pedestrian traffic, and curbside parking. Homes along this portion of the street take side frontage. Here's another view further west. This photo is looking eastbound near the intersection with Brookview Avenue. In this picture, you can see there's no sidewalk on the south side. We have a standard sidewalk on the north side adjacent to the homes. This photo is looking to the west from Brookview Avenue. And this final picture shows the westbound view at Valcroft Avenue, where the road narrows to 38 feet in width and the speed limit becomes 25 miles an hour. Homes in this segment take direct frontage along the street. The primary traffic concerns that have been voiced by the residents focus on speed, pedestrian safety, specifically missing sidewalk on the south side of the street, crosswalk at Woolsbrook Court, and finally the other concern being poor driving behaviors. As shown in the pictures, the lack of road striping and the 46 feet wide road affords drivers plenty of room to maneuver their vehicles. To resolve the traffic concerns, staff was asked to consider implementation of a number of traffic measures, including a speed limit reduction, speed humps, all-way stop sign control, and marked pedestrian crosswalks. All of the measures are not eligible for implementation, with explanations provided in the staff report. If the commissioners wish to discuss these reasons, we can address them at the conclusion of this presentation. So with the requested measures by the residents not eligible for implementation, the city proposes implementing roadway striping to calm traffic between Valcroft Avenue to Westlake Boulevard. There are two concepts that were included in the staff report, and this first photo shows one that features centerline striping and painted shoulders. The strategy of this striping creates a defined lane for east and westbound vehicles, and the white edge line stripe defines the shoulder. This separates the through traffic from parked vehicles and or pedestrians that may be in the roadway. The second option to stripe Bridgegate features a center turn lane and painted shoulders. The advantage of this option is that it reduces rear end conflicts at driveways and intersections and offers more separation between east and westbound vehicles. This is staff's preferred option. And given the set of concerns voiced by the residents, adding roadway striping could ease the residents' traffic concerns. There are other striping options that could be developed, such as this one that shows bike lanes and parking lanes, or this final option, which just shows a simple centerline stripe. Adding roadway striping may be considered a sensitive issue near residential properties, so we felt it was important to get input from the residents on the idea of adding roadway striping to Bridgegate. We mailed out approximately 300 meeting notifications to the area highlighted in yellow on this map. The meeting notice invited the residents to provide their input to the commission this evening. And so far we've received 2 emails supporting road striping. They both prefer the centerline striping option shown in the report. We also received feedback from 33 residents opposed to road striping. I would like to add that there are other similar streets like Bridgegate, where Collector Street has a higher speed limit and narrows to a standard residential street with a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. These streets include Parkview Drive, Michael Drive, Campus Drive. And based on our experiences on these similar streets where we've used roadway striping, we're proposing a similar approach here on Bridgegate. So with that, the staff recommendation is in the report. If there's public support in addition to support of the commission for the striping proposal in the staff report or other striping options that the commission may develop, including those featuring bike lanes, the striping could be implemented this summer. If new striping is implemented, a status report to the commission would be brought back 9 months after implementation. If public support is not apparent and the commission does not support adding striping to Bridgegate, the striping proposal would be discontinued. We realize that the majority of feedback received is not in favor of road striping. However, the city is committed to improving traffic safety, and that is why this item is being considered this evening. This concludes the staff report, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mashiko. I think the report was excellent, and I appreciate the information we received with our packet as well. Before we move forward, I'd like to ask our commissioners, do you have any questions of staff directly related to the report? I'm seeing that no one does. I'm sorry, Drew, you do, please. Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Thank you very much for a thorough presentation, kind of laying out the options. You had mentioned one of the options, I believe, was more of a bike lane striping with that center lane stripe down the middle. I guess just walk me through just why wasn't that why isn't that not a preferred option, just considering it's residential streets? It was more curiosity than anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could have gone any different direction with these striping options. Bike lanes would definitely serve a benefit in this type of community where you're going to get a number of cyclists in the area. But I guess in terms of like some of the descriptions of traffic, putting in the center turn lane, that option that we stated as our preferred option, we like that separation between the east and westbound traffic. But you guys can come up with any other combination of options other than the ones we've shown. But yeah, there's different ways to go with this.
And if I could add, I think that center turn lane has been implemented on La Granada, east of Herbs Road, which is a somewhat similar situation with a wider street that we're looking to do some traffic calming. There may have been other factors that resulted in that striping solution being implemented for that roadway, but there's precedent for that in the city.
And just by all means, I don't discount. I actually like staff's preferred option personally, but I'm always interested in, if we can get more bike lanes in the city as much as possible. Kathy's smiling, she sees it. I'm always certainly for it, just because that helps us with being a bike friendly city. So Thank you very much for the question. I'm finished, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Yes, sir, Commissioner Hayek. And remind you to unmute. There you go.
Do we have standard stripings? Like, is this just part of our standard stripings? Are there other options that we can do, like such as, painting 35 miles per hour or speed limit 35, like in the roadway, as opposed to painting actual stripes?
Well, that was one of the first things we did out there early on after we were alerted by the residents of the concerns. We did a field inventory of what's out there and noticed at the speed limit signs, the pavement markings weren't there. So we added the 35 pavement marking next to the sign. And there's a 25 mile per hour sign further up by Valcroft. We added that pavement stencil up there. But usually in a residential area, there's other pavement markings are not very common, such as, that are beyond the speed limit, which is what we had in this case.
I guess in response to Commissioner Hayek's question, those already exist. Yeah.
Okay, there's not included in the pictures though, right?
They were included because in the picture that was on our screen, the speed limit was actually on the street.
Painted in the street?
Yes.
Not on the agenda, right? So that's what I was looking for.
I have not gone deep into the packet. I'm doing that right now while we speak. I will tell you that the photographs in our packet don't show the same depth as to where the street was marked.
Yes, that's correct. The packet photos don't show all the photos I showed in the PowerPoint. So I think in the report you only find the options that we laid out for striping, and I think a couple of photos of the street, but not of the stencils.
Do we have any statistical data showing that when we do these markings that it does have an impact either on collisions or speeds?
One of the things that I can help you with a little bit is that we have found that, and I would defer probably to Sergeant Patterson and to staff, but we have found that most of the people that are the quote unquote rule benders or rule abusers are all local, or significant majority are local. And so that usually when we make a measure as simple as that or as low key as that, it works initially. And then as the people become familiar and it's their neighborhood and they know the lay of the land, it's not paid attention to as closely. That being said, if any staff or Sergeant Patterson would want to react to that, please.
Yes, that's correct, Chair Lemo. Usually whenever we implement something new, there is a immediate change in driver behavior because they notice it's a new condition, so they adjust and adapt. But over time, people become used to that condition, and then they sort of don't have that same focus as when they first drove that road, when they saw it for the first time with that new striping configuration. The example I'd like to point out is years ago, we had a street, Avenida de los Arboles. We repainted that road after an overlay. It had a center line down the middle of the road and it was 4 lanes. We changed that road to a 3-lane road, which is a single lane in each direction and a 2-way turn lane down the middle. Collisions on that road immediately dropped. So that's one of the things that road striping can do, is it can reduce a number of the traffic conflicts that you see on the roadways. So the preferred option that staff had pointed out in the staff report, that's one of the reasons why we made that recommendation, because it does create that separation between the 2 directions of traffic.
I understand that on the main thoroughfare, but in a residential neighborhood though, do we have any data showing that if we do stripe it, it does have an impact on it? I'm just trying to understand the justification of putting stripes down. If we don't have, do we have any evidence in a similar residential neighborhood to show that, you know, by doing this, it does work or does not work.
Well, we do have evidence. It's been referred to over time as a road diet and other things, but when those calming measures are put into effect, while some of us would say we can't always have the effect that we really, really want, the fact of the matter is that, yes, we do have proof that it does calm the traffic with many, many people. I can't tell you the majority. It's difficult to put a measurement out other than we know that complaints go away, traffic collisions happen less. But we gone out, for example, on a lot of these roads and done the same traffic measurements that got us to this point?
Yeah, well, there's not a whole lot of streets like Bridgegate in the city where you have a wide road. I think in the report I pointed out 3 similar streets where you start out with a wide road. As you go further down and you start entering deeper in the neighborhood, the road narrows up. And all those streets that I pointed out, we did use some type of striping treatment to bring a little bit more order to the road versus if we left those roads unstriped. I mean, it'll look just like Bridgegate where you have a wide road and people can choose where they want to drive. Most people are probably driving on the proper side of the unpainted imaginary center line. But then, there's always going to be a handful of drivers that are going to be driving. They see a slow car in front of them. They have a wide unmarked road. They may, they may think about passing that other car. So that's what road striping does. It influences their thinking into not doing some of those poor, driving behaviors.
Also, with all due respect to city staff, I will tell you that I've just recently almost been hit head on a road very much like this. And to go just a little bit further, as I watch cars on similar roads, one of the reasons that people are not able to stay within this imaginary line is because when they're busy texting or sending messages or answering emails or visiting websites while they're driving, they have a very difficult time even staying within the imaginary line. And so that sort of helps them a little bit remember where they're supposed to be while they're busy trying to do all of their social media work while driving. I do have to interrupt us with a question. And this is just one of our technological questions I need the city attorney and others to weigh in on. Because of Zoom allows folks to interact and talk to you by way of these little Q&A or chat areas, we have people asking us questions as to why don't we do this or why don't you do that? Or do you realize I'm here and I want to speak? I'm under the impression that we are only answering back and going back and forth with folks in a live setting so that it can be recorded and so that the public knows what everybody else knows. Is that correct, Mr. Womack?
That's correct. The chat is not a part of the public record, nor is it part of this meeting.
Right. So I would caution all of us not to react to anything that may come down the pike on the chat because it's unfair to all participants. Do we have any other questions from our commissioners of staff? Okay, hearing none, then we will ask for public comment, or I'm sorry, for the comments on this agenda item right now. So Ms. Vasquez, will you call this item, please?
Sure. Looks like currently we have 20 individuals who have requested to speak on the item. Speakers are allowed 2 minutes. And for the record, 35 written statements have been submitted, 2 in support, 33 opposed to staff recommendations.
Thank you very much. And our first speaker is?
Okay. The first speaker is Michael Alexander. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining and again when your time is up.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate everyone listening. I am against striping Bridgegate. I do not believe that, I think we're talking about separate issues. In my perspective, all of the incidents and traffic issues that have happened on Bridgegate is due to speed, not collisions, head-on collisions. All that in my awareness is all incidents have been single vehicles that have run up on the curb or run up into somebody's yard. And I think that striping will make our neighborhood street of Bridgegate look like a main thoroughfare. I don't believe striping reduces speed. I think it allows people the ability to go a little bit faster. And I think that the striping also does not address the pedestrian crossing issue that we have at
1 minute remaining.
Bridgegate and Willsbrook Court. On the south side of Bridgegate and Willsbrook Court, the sidewalk ends and it becomes a natural crossing for pedestrians. Children going to Westlake Elementary, children going to the bus stop that is also on the south side of the street between Willsbrook Court and Westlake Boulevard. And I think we are dodging the issue by talking about painting stripes and turning this into a main thoroughfare looking street when it's a residential street. And we need to put in measures to help pedestrians cross, which would also bring traffic to a stop at certain points on that street. And Jim, I appreciate everything you've done. You've been super responsive, of gentlemen. I know your hands are kind of tied to the policies of the city, but it is on a blinded.
Your time is up.
It's on a
Thank
blinded.
you very much, Mr. Alexander. Thank you very
Sir.
much. Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Max Kennyhod.
Mr. Kennyhod, are you there? Could you unmute yourself, please? Can you hear us? Mr. Kennyhod. Okay. We move on with the next speaker and try Mr. Kennyhod at the end of our speakers.
Sure. The next speaker is Michelle Heichel.
And could you please, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Michelle Heichel. I've lived for 23 years on Bridgegate Street. I have 2 children that were born in this house on Bridgegate Street that rode their bikes to Westlake Elementary School. I'm a triathlete. I run and ride my bike. I have countless miles on Bridgegate Street, and I have never considered the traffic on Bridgegate Street to be an issue. I have never seen an incident with a bike, a pedestrian, or a car. You're all talking about collisions and that this striping is going to prevent collisions. But in the staff report that you put out that I read, there were 2 incidents in 4 years. One was a DUI where a person went off the road and hit a fence. And the second was an unsafe turn on Vailcroft by a young individual, and he hit a wall. So we're looking for a problem that really has never existed.
You have 1 minute.
State Street. And I think that's a real problem with this whole project, is that what you're doing is going to create more harm and risk. And I see that on Westlake Boulevard, Caltrans put in striping and it's incredibly unsafe now. So we don't want to see that happen to Bridgegate Street. We also don't want no parking on the other side of the street, because then we'll have people making unsafe U-turns to get to the north side and park. The street functions very, very, very well as it is. Yes, we have some people that drive too fast, but those people are going to drive too fast regardless of the striping. It may stop them for a few weeks because they'll wonder how they're supposed to drive on it. but they will go back to their speeding, just as the commissioners here have noted that it works for a little bit, but a little bit is not worth ruining the street and the neighborhood for. Thank you very much.
Your time is up.
Thank you, Ms. Heichel. Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Jay Bertel.
And could you unmute Ms. Bertel? Ms. Bertel, if you can hear us, could you please unmute? Okay, we'll ask Ms. Bertel we'll move her to the end of our list and call our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Marjorie Armsby. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
She may no longer, there you go.
Ms. Armsby, are you there?
Do you hear me, Rick?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, something's going wrong because Marjorie's upstairs and she was going to say something, and so was I, and I got the little button to say unmute. So she's on the phone trying to do it. So
okay, well, why don't we do this?
No problems here.
Brad, why don't we do this? Why don't you, because both of your comments, did they both submit speaker cards?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do your 2 minutes, Brad, and then have Ms. Ormsby hang up the phone, come downstairs and take the next 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, I'll grab her. Good evening, everybody. I've lived in my home since 1984 and I travel the road frequently. Yes, some cars do speed on Bridgegate, on Valecroft, and in the neighborhood, not to mention our freeways and highways. Unfortunately, that's just how life works. We obviously don't want repeat of lives lost, so I feel this discussion is worthwhile, but I think there must be some other options to consider, which I don't think have been addressed. I don't feel turning our neighborhood Bridgegate into a marked up road with double yellow lines, confusing hash mark painted shoulders as an answer to speeding cars. It might slow some of these speeding cars initially, but because of the confusing marked streets, in the long run, they're going to figure out how to drive fast again, and we're going to be right back to where we were. This is a neighborhood street, not a major thoroughfare. I believe the city wants input from people who live in the neighborhood, who drive the streets every day. And to that point, sending the affected homeowner letters was a great idea. However, I find the letters confusing. In that letter, you said if you can't make the meeting, do something by March 17th. That was very confusing. So for this reason, I think you need to continue this discussion so everybody can be a part of it. In your only provided options, A and B, you included no parking on the south side of the street. I don't feel this is a good option. Very often there's cars parked on the south side of the street by hikers and bikers who use the trails right at Bridgegate and Valecroft. Now you're introducing pedestrians crossing the street without crosswalks. In addition, there are other cars that park along that side, postal trucks, delivery trucks, utility trucks, neighbors stopping to use their cell phones because they don't work at the house. I personally feel the hash mark painted shoulders are very confusing, unsightly, and unnecessary. But I also understand
Mr. Ormsby, your time is up. Is Mrs. Ormsby downstairs yet? Mr. Ormsby. Mr. Armsby, do we have? I think he's calling her, and that's why he's on mute.
Okay,
I'm here.
Thank you, Ms. Ormsby. Could you announce your name and your city of residence, please?
Yes, Marjorie Armsby, Westlake Village.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your opportunity to speak. I prepared for 3 minutes, but to truncate the areas that I had emailed you all just to address new information, okay? So I see that speeding and safety is the issue, but I believe that striping is not the solution. Look at the ill-placed stripes on Westlake Boulevard to Bridgegate as a real-life example. Everyone ignores the lines and drives over them as they will do on these striped proposals. It may deter them temporarily, as Chairman Lemo said, but residents will return to their previous driving habits, as others have said as well. As for texting, this section is only a third mile, and my guess is people don't begin texting after they turn onto Bridgegate to that area because there is a turn right away on that area. So they're not going to be texting in that specific spot. You say you can't add humps of speed limit signs that are truly effective approaches here because of a code. Then change the code. Lines won't equal safer streets. It seems like striping is the easiest choice, not the best one. With street striping, vision will be even more impaired. Take a look at your pictures in attachments 2 and 3. That white van on Bridgegate Street near Vailcroft has been parked there in that spot for a long time. And many neighbors have talked about it as it impedes the vision exiting Vailcroft onto Bridgegate Street. We crawl out of the stop sign at Vailcroft Avenue to try to peer around it to see if a car is approaching. That van is a safety hazard for all on Vailcroft and perhaps a reason for the 2 accidents you've noted. Option B would interfere even more with that line of vision as it pushes cars closer to the parking side of the street where vision is impeded, possibly causing more accidents. Moving that van would largely address your gap crossing judgment onto Bridgegate from Vailcroft. Also, over the past 30 years, the trees on the south side of the road have uprooted the asphalt and all of us drive towards the middle to avoid the roots. Many times we've waited a long time before the issue is addressed. Lines will not deter residents from avoiding those roots when they reappear, and they will. Option will be more impacted with this situation as the driving lane will be closer to the uprooted trees.
Your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Armsby. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Can we move on to our next speaker, please?
Our next speaker is Amy David. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Ms. Davis, are you there? Ms. Davis, could you press unmute so we can hear if you're there, please? Okay, we'll go with our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Robin Stidham. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Ms. Stidham, can you hear? There you go.
Hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, just so you know, usually there's an unmute button for everyone to click, but the way that you have it set up, you have to find it. So that's why people are having a hard time. You might want to scan on the pictures, people who are having a hard time finding the unmute when it's your turn. Okay, traffic commissioners, Mr. Mashiko, thank you very much for giving us this time to speak. My name is Robin Stidham. Myself and my husband have been Thousand Oaks residents for over 25 years. We've owned the house that we live on right off of Bridgegate for 24 years. We love Foxmore Hills. We love our neighbors and we love our neighborhood, and we're very concerned about turning Bridgegate into what would really look like an urban street. People have mentioned about the striping on Westlake Boulevard. What they didn't mention is they didn't even give us a turn lane to turn onto Bridgegate. So when you even mention striping, people just cringe because it is ridiculous what goes on in that striping. It just makes people more confused. People have also mentioned about the date of March 17th to submit correspondence being the deadline. And so I also do agree with that.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. The other thing that I did want to mention, and thank you, Mr. Mashiko, for sending the staff report, because I have been reading it and trying to understand why you can't have speed limit reduction, why we can't have speed bumps, why we can't have all of these things. And I'd like to ask if there's any kind of dispensation, because this street is in a neighborhood and it does not go out to anything. It just stops to 320 homes, that maybe there's a dispensation that we can use, because it just seems like we missed the idea of having 25 mph because we have 45 feet instead of the 40 feet, and because our homes aren't facing Bridgegate. So it does feel like if we could get a dispensation, if you could tell us how we can do that. I think a lot of us would be very happy to be able to reduce.
Your
this.
time is up.
Thank you so much for my time.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Dave Burson. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
I don't see him on the screen, so I
don't
have to make the assumption that he's no longer with us.
Yeah.
All right, so we can move to our next speaker.
Sure. Next speaker is Ben Copeland. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
And I'd just like everyone to know that you don't have the opportunity to unmute until it's your time to speak. So then you'll see either the red microphone by your name, or you'll see 3 dots at the top of your own screen that allow you to unmute, or you can go to the bottom left screen, general screen, and unmute that way. Mr. Copeland, you're up. Thank you.
And I hope you can hear me.
Very well, we can.
All
yes,
right,
sir.
awesome. Okay. So I live on Bailcroft and have been there for the last 5 years. I generally oppose any lining, but at the same time, I understand the desire to control the traffic. It's a fairly bizarre area because of the width of Westlake Boulevard right in that area, as well as the width of the road as you turn onto onto Bridgegate. I am definitely against the turn lane because the turn lane would make no sense. The only people that are going to be turning into the streets are the people that are turning north, and that's the ones that are coming in. If you're coming south, exiting the neighborhood, it's very, very few people that are going to be coming out and turning left. So the turn lane just simply is not necessary. I'm also concerned, though, about the people that walk in the shadows on the trees on the south side. And I do like the idea of having some kind of a white stripe there just to protect that area, because there is no sidewalk. And I can see the danger there. It's very difficult to see them, even when I'm not texting or playing on the web on my phone as I'm driving. I'm kidding. But these people are in danger. And I love the idea of the bike lane. So maybe just a simple center line if you absolutely feel it necessary, but definitely a bike lane would help bring the traffic more into the center. And at the same time, I think help give the controls that you're looking for, as well as the protection to the people. But again, I'm also in agreement with the majority of my neighbors in that I'd like to try to avoid any additional markings just because it preserves the neighborhood part of the street. The last quick comment, which is not going to be germane to tonight, is that traffic light at Westlake Boulevard and Bridgegate is horridly unable to recognize cars as you come in from Bridgegate to Westlake Boulevard. And it's causing a lot of people to run the red light, especially on the weekends, because the sensitivity is really off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your time is up, but I know staff will record that concern and look into that. And if they don't get back to you directly, then we'll have that information at our next meeting. I do want to let people know, so that they don't waste some of their space in their comments, that the striping that took place on Westlake Boulevard was done 2 years ago, and that was under the supervision of Caltrans. City of Thousand Oaks literally had nothing to do with that. So we can provide you a little extra time by not having your comments deal with that. And thank you very much, Mr. Copeland. We appreciate your comments. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Laura Mueller. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Possibly is no longer on the line.
All right, we'll move to our next speaker. And anyone who had passed by because they couldn't unmute, they'll be called again at the end of all speakers.
Our next speaker is Judy Bacchus. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
So we see you, Ms. Bacchus. Could you hit unmute, please? There you go. Oh, no? Ms. Bacchus, do you see any of the three places where there may be a mute on your screen? There you go.
Host would like you to speak to you. I click on unmute and the sign, there it goes away.
We can hear you. We can hear you very
Okay,
well.
yes, I can hear you too. And I go along with Brad and Marjorie and Michelle, Heichel, and all the rest of them that live in this area. I've been here for 44 years and I have not in this house up Bridgegate. And I have never, just like Michelle said, I have never really seen a lot of people speeding, and they do not pass you. If you're coming in off of Westlake Boulevard, they're not passing you like they do on Westlake Boulevard. Everybody is pretty cordial, you know, that you just do. And even going out, if you had that middle lane in there, you'd find people, it's a turning lane, you'd find people passing each other all the time. I think the striping is absolutely horrible. And the only thing that I have had a problem with, it's sometimes like on one of the pictures you showed,
We have 1 minute.
which was going north, I guess. It was down at the corner of Bridgegate and Brookview. A car park there are work cars, which was one time when the house in the corner was being renovated. It was paint trucks and work trucks and all that. And also when somebody comes down to work on those control panels, they park there and you have to end up going out into the middle of the road in order to see if anybody's coming because they block the line of sight. And that's a very important part. So you don't want people parking on the north side of the street at corners. It's not good. But those are some very seldom happen. And if the mailman parks on the other side of the street, nobody really cares. And nobody drives down next to the flood control because it's usually always bump, 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 bump because of all the routes.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Okay. Next speaker on the list is Nick Narowski. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Mr. Narowski, I don't see your name on the screen. Are you there? Okay, let's move on to our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Rod Mclean. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I've lived here since '94. My name is Rod Mclean from Westlake. And I was curious as far as what we're trying to address at this. I asked, what's the problem statement? If it's safety, the first thing is, why don't we have a crosswalk where the kids are crossing the streets right in front of the legal center or right there by the post box? They're not walking down to Westlake to cross the street there and coming back to the bus stop. So we're not addressing that. If we're talking about speeding, stripes don't address speeding. What is the problem statement this group is trying to address? That's my first question. Can anybody answer that? There's no head-on. Nobody's having a head-on accident out here. So what are we trying to address?
Mr. Mclean, please go ahead with your comments within your time frame, and staff will answer questions at the end of our speakers today, and possibly we'll get more questions from our commissioners.
All right, so I'll reclaim the time that you took. My concern is what we're trying to address with this entire striping issue. I don't understand the way of trying to make this street look like a main thoroughfare because it's not. I heard the word feeder street. This is a community street. There are people that live on Bridgegate. So that doesn't make sense. The statements we made about striping don't address speeding. They don't address accidents. They don't address anything. So my curiosity is, why are we trying to put stripes down the middle of the street in a community area?
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please. Excuse me, Ms. Vasquez, you were muted.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brandon Bertel. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, guys. My name is Brandon Bertel, and I live here in Westlake Village, just off Bridgegate. First, I want to thank all you guys for taking the time to, review the dangerous speed issues here along Bridgegate. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I'm a graduate of UCLA. I'm a proud father of 3, and my wife and I bought our home here off Bridgegate several years ago, mostly because of what a safe and amazing community it is. I love living here. This is our home. But right now, I feel like our home is not safe because of that street. And I want to thank Jim for his professionalism and the report he created in response to our concerns with speed. However, the comparisons and the solution of stripes is not persuasive and is not going to solve our core issue of speeding. And here's why. First, the traffic report was conducted at the height of a once-in-a-century event where traffic was reduced to almost zero. I do not feel that the report reflects the high volume of traffic I've witnessed the past 2 years prior, and I see picking up again. I routinely see vehicles traveling in excess of 60 miles per hour, and I'd like you guys to look at the photos I submitted to Jim of the 2 accidents at my house and in front of my house. The first accident is a car that crashed onto my property. It almost completely into my house, going over 60 miles per hour. We had over $40,000 in property damage. And I'm just lucky that one of my kids wasn't killed or someone wasn't dangerously hurt. The second accident is of another individual who crashed through I don't know what you call that thing, but the gate there along Bridgegate, and his car all went to the wash. He almost hit an old woman before he crashed through there at an excessive high speed. Those 2 accidents are not the accidents that Michelle described earlier. Those 2 accidents are not in Jim's report that you guys have. I am now averaging 2 major accidents at my house or in front of my house a year.
Your time is up.
Accidents are clearly from speed. I need your help, guys.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Bertel. Before you leave, thank you also for your service. Let's move with our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Annie Alexander. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Annie Alexander, and I live in Westlake Village. I have 2 children who attend Westlake Elementary. I oppose striping on Bridgegate because I do not want it to look like a main thoroughfare. And I feel that it doesn't effectively slow cars, and it also doesn't provide crossing, which is a major issue. I'd much rather have stop signs, which I feel will force people to slow down in order to stop, as well as provide crossing for the kids walking to Westlake Elementary or to Kalina bus stop. I do not feel safe having my kids cross Bridgegate to go to school. The crossing sign, unfortunately, hasn't worked. The sun is in driver's eyes. They drive way faster than the speed limit, which is already pretty high, especially at the bottom of Bridgegate. Rick also brought up a great point that locals eventually stop following the rules, and I feel that stop signs will not have that issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alexander. Our next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Marcy Armsby. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Ms. Armsby, can you hear us? All right, we'll move to our next speaker, and Ms. Armsby will go to the last position there.
Okay, the next speaker is Samantha Grass. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Ms. Grass, do you see the red mute light perhaps on the bottom left corner? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Samantha Grass, and I've been a resident of Westlake Village in Foxmore Hills for 7 years. I am a mom of 2 young kids, so road safety is for sure a top priority. That being said, I too, like most of my neighbors, am against the road striping proposal. I have never found there to be an issue with safety on the road that road striping would resolve. And the speeders will continue to speed. And I think the reason that everyone is bringing up the Westlake road striping done by Caltrans is just showing an example of how road striping does not work. If it doesn't work on Westlake Boulevard and cars are not paying attention to the striping there, then why would it be something that people pay attention to in our residential neighborhood? I too feel that stop signs would be a better solution. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grass. Appreciate your comments. Ms. Vasquez, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Mariah Tackett. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, can you hear me, Elise?
Very good.
Hi,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. And thank you to Jim. My name is Mariah Tackett. I'm a resident in Westlake Village for the past 10 years, homeowner off of Bridgegate. And I echo many of my neighbors' concerns back to the problem statement regarding the speed. Fully agree that if we do striping, it really doesn't impact the behavior patterns of people driving up and down Bridgegate. I am interested in a more active solution and against striping, and for a solution for stop signs or speed bumps or a pedestrian crossing. Jim, thank you for your report earlier on. I'm curious, and I believe at the end of this, we can open it up for discussion, but curious as to why we don't qualify for a stop sign or speed bumps, and would like to hear more about that and what we can do to try to qualify the street to be able to be eligible for those. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tackett. Our next speaker.
Okay, our next speaker is John Ellis. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yes, hi, this is John Ellis, resident of Westlake Village for over 20 years and Foxmore Hills now for over 4 years. Appreciate the time for everyone tonight. And I think as you heard repeatedly from everyone here, our primary issue that we're dealing with here really is speed. Overall, though, I think we've got three main issues, speeding being the biggest one, of course, across the board. And while I think Bridgegate is not really a main thoroughfare in the same sense that Westlake Village or Westlake Boulevard is, it is a main thoroughfare actually for everyone in Foxmore Hills. And I think it's a big problem why we actually have speeding, because you essentially have everyone who's trying to come in and out of Foxmore Hills using that as the quickest way to sort of get out to the 101. And so unfortunately, it's also on a hill. So you have a lot of people who basically are either speeding to get home or speeding to get out of here. And it just creates a huge issue. Another major issue that we're facing is visibility turning onto Bridgegate from parked cars. So you have people who are parking on Bridgegate, really making it impossible
1 minute.
to see around the area. In fact, there's a motorhome right now outside of my court that's been sitting there that I really can't see when I'm turning out. And then, of course, I think as Mike mentioned at the beginning of this, you've got people crossing Bridgegate at the bottom of the hill close to our court. And so I think the proposed center stripe solution is only not really going to slow cars down, and the side striping is only going to make the visibility worse. Really, I think as you heard from others, only stop signs, rumble strips, or speed bumps are really going to do a much better job in solving the problems.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis. Next speaker, please.
Okay, we're going back to see who else is available. Max Kenny-Hod, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Mr. Kenny-Hod, are you there this time? We see that you're there. If you could please take a look at the three areas that may allow you to unmute. Mr. Kenny-Hod, can you hear us? I believe that after 2 tries, we're going to need to move on and then move on with our meeting, please. Our next speaker, please.
Okay. Jay Bertel, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jessica Bertel, and I live in Westlake Village, and right on Bridgegate, basically. I have 3 little kids, all under 10, who use Bridgegate with myself. We go on bike rides. We go to Westlake. We go to the Greenbelt every single day. And I have a bird's eye view of Bridgegate, and I will say speeding is absolutely a problem. I see cars go up to 60 miles an hour up and down Bridgegate. I know some of the residents say that's not a problem because I have that bird's eye view. I'm able to see it every day, all day, and I'm usually in the kitchen watching. I don't think striping will help. I honestly think that we need something to make the cars stop so that these kids and pedestrians feel safe walking on Bridgegate, kids going to school, kids going to the bus stop. We need a stop sign. I believe maybe we need crosswalks, speed humps. Right now, we just have an open, wide street where people are gunning it back and forth.
You have 1 minute.
Oh, thank you. I think that's it. I think that might be it. I will say I've seen 3 car accidents in the last 2 years. I know those were in the report, but I saw them. I'm not sure why. Maybe they weren't in the police report, but I've seen it with my own eyes. I also want to say thank you to Jim Mashiko, who's been working with me for a year and a half now. Several emails, several phone calls, and I really appreciate working with us and helping us out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bertel. Our next speaker.
Amy David, please click on mute and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Ms. Davis, can you hear us? Ms. Davis, are you able to locate your mute or unmute button? Okay, we will move on to our next speaker, please.
Okay. I'm sorry. Does someone have who's the next speaker who missed after Amy David?
I would not have that information, unfortunately.
Perhaps we can allow any of the remaining speakers who didn't have a chance to be heard to, there's a raised hand function.
Yes, please. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
If
somebody has that record, we can refer to that as well of who may have been next.
Okay. I don't have the ability to see any hands raised. Do either of my colleagues? All right. How many people were there that
we received one raised hand so far.
Okay, let's put that speaker on if we could.
Okay, that's Lorianne DeBacco.
Ms. DeBacco, can you unmute yourself, please? There you go.
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me? Great, thank you. My name is Lorraine DeBacco. I live on Briar Glen Avenue, which is just off of Bridgegate, and I also am against the striping. I do realize speeding is an issue on Bridgegate, and there is more traffic there, but I don't see striping helping, just as it hasn't helped on other streets around our community. And I'm wondering if there is more that can be done to actually ticket these people who are speeding. And sometimes it is very high speeds. And if the striping ends right where Vailcroft is, people gun it up the hill, continuing to that gated community, and they also gun it up Vailcroft. So I'm wondering if there's something else that can be done to change these people's behavior, like consistently ticketing people, putting up additional signs. There are a lot of pedestrians on Bridgegate that do walk along the tree side of the street, which I realize is very unsafe, but because it's shaded, that's where they walk. And I'm wondering if it was ever considered to put in sidewalks.
1 minute.
1 minute, okay, thank you. I'm just wondering if there were other issues or other options that were considered other than striping, because none of us believe that's gonna fix the problem.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeBacco.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a raised hand that did not get to speak that either of our staff members can see?
We see one additional speaker, and that's Amy Davis.
All right, let's try Amy Davis one more time. You're on the screen, Ms. Davis. Have you been able to unmute? All right, so let me try this. There are 3 different ways, depending on how you're on with us, that you can unmute. You can unmute by putting your cursor to the top right above your name and choose unmute from the menu that you can cause to drop down. You can go to the bottom left of your screen and choose to unmute that way. But we're going to need to move our meeting along. Can you please try all of those ways to unmute Ms. Davis?
there's also, with the webinar feature we're using, when the speakers are promoted and are ready to speak, they're supposed to get a prompt on the middle of their screen that they can simply also select.
So if you're joining us by way of webinar, then you can just simply touch the middle of your screen.
Right, but
unfortunately, we can only provide a very minimal tutorial because we need to move on with our meeting. So
we have one final speaker, I believe, is now the hand raised, Lisa Poland.
Okay, by all means, Miss Poland, are you there? Ms. Poland?
This is actually Mark Pollan, her husband. And I just wanted to just briefly just sort of agree with our neighbors, the Bertels, and just say we do hear the speeding, you know, at odd hours of the night going up and down the street, and disagree with the striping aspect. Don't think that that really will help, just as long, you know, as much as everyone else has basically been saying, and think that a stop sign or some bump somewhere along the line, if that's possible, is probably the best way to curb this speeding that does happen and that we do hear, you know, at odd occasions. And they had cars turning up from Bridgegate onto Brookview, go into their front yard. It's dangerous. They have kids, and you never know who could have been out there. People walk along that street and up Brookview and down Bridgegate all the time. And if someone had been there, that could have been a fatality. So I just feel like if there is a way to
have 1 minute
on the code and do something in that regard, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poland. I'm going to make the assumption that is our last speaker of the evening. Is that correct? Before we open things up for questions from our commissioners, because we do have 2 of our commissioners that are relatively new, I want to make certain that we are efficient in the way we discuss this. So it's important for you to know that there is no benefit in us discussing a stop sign, period. Stop signs are not permitted to control speed. That's not our jurisdiction. That's the state of California. Believe me, not only have I heard many requests for stop signs over 12 years, I've made many requests for stop signs over 12 years. And after having the benefit of attending seminars and learning the facts, stop signs are not a considered option here. So unfortunately, our residents are not always aware of that. In regards to speed humps, there are certain warrants that need to take place and certain things that need to take place. And that's not necessarily out of the question, because another traffic study could take place in a higher volume time and maybe yield one of those warrants. It also requires residents to go out door to door and get signatures that total 75% of the people that face the street where they're asking for a speed hump. So I want you to have that perspective on where we need to go. Last but not least, we are always fortunate to have the opportunity to listen to as many citizens as possible. But unlike City Council or even Planning Commission deals with the rules and code as they're set forth, and they and City Council do have a lot more rights than we do. Our responsibility is simply based in safety as opposed to convenience or aesthetics. And so with that, I would like to open up questions of staff by all of our commissioners before we do any discussion amongst ourselves. So after hearing our speakers, are there any questions of staff? Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Am I supposed to let staff answer questions speakers might have put forth first? I guess that would be proper.
Chair level. Yeah, I'd like to address a couple of comments.
I apologize. So, Mr. Mashiko, if you would lead us through that, I would appreciate it.
Oh, okay. As far as the notes I took, I want to expand on some of the comments you made. Stop signs, I think those are one of the most frequently received requests we get, probably on every street in the city, because people think they're for speed control. They're not for speed control. They're for regulating right away at the busiest intersections in the city. I think if we had stop signs at, every other intersection, you're going to take 20 minutes just to get, half a mile. And so, yeah, there are warrants to, determine when stop signs can be put in. And those are based on an 8-hour period. We look at roughly 500 vehicles per hour, averaging in each of those 8 hours, 200 from the minor leg, 300 on the major. And for this type of street, you're not going to reach those levels. People ask for speed humps. As Commissioner Lemo said, yes, there are requirements for that. A petition process is what gets it going, but those are reserved for our 25 mile per hour residential streets. This is 35 miles per hour. If we were to put speed humps on this street, we would have to have some overriding circumstances to, deviate from our standards on something like that. Other people have asked for reducing the speed limit. It's 35 miles per hour, and that's set on state law. The vehicle code governs on how we set our speed limit. We perform a radar survey of the vehicles traveling the street, and based on what the drivers are driving, it's what we call the 85th percentile speed. We set the speed according to that speed that most people are driving. And I think the other issue was for marked crosswalks. Marked crosswalks, we do have a crosswalk marking policy. It's also another very common request that we get, and they are not devices to control driver behavior or slow people down, because usually marked crosswalks are invisible to a driver. If you're about 200, 300 feet away, you probably can't see that there is a marked crosswalk present. But we do put those in certain circumstances where there's a continuous high flow of pedestrian activity from where there may be a destination point where there's a continuous draw of people always wanting to cross the street. And all these intersections, these are all legal crossing points, whether it's marked or unmarked. So a marked crosswalk is there also to be used when it's not clear that that's the crossing point. But all these intersections along Bridgegate, those are all legal crossing points, whether it's marked or unmarked. Someone asked the question earlier on, why are we looking at this? I pointed out early in the presentation that the main issues here are speed, pedestrian safety, and then the poor driving behaviors. And those are always hard to control. There's not a whole lot of measures out there in the traffic engineering world to control driving behavior, because everything rests on the compliance and what the driver is going to do. Speed humps are one of the few devices that we do use that can control driver behavior, because it's going to influence drivers when they feel that physical jolt on the vehicle. It's when they drive over a speed hump, that's going to influence them to drive a bit slower. Someone asked about, a safe route to get to Westlake Elementary School. I think the safest route is probably using the signal at Westlake and Bridgegate, because most of the homes, or all the homes, are on that north side of the street. So if they stay on that north side, they continue down Bridgegate, they get to the signal at Westlake. They have the signal controls there in place. They have the pedestrian buttons and displays to guide pedestrians across the street, and let the pedestrians know when it's their time to cross. Okay, someone asked, is there a way maybe that there can be overriding considerations to implement some of the measures like speed humps, stop signs, things like that? That's something that's out of staff's hands at this point. We are bound to the rules and regulations, usually by the vehicle code, traffic manuals, and things like that. If the commission feels that maybe this street has some overriding circumstances, they can identify what they are, and we can take a look at putting in some of the devices that we typically wouldn't qualify for this type of roadway. Another person mentioned about the signal at Westlake at Bridgegate. The delay there as they try to get out of Bridgegate is very long. We did follow up on that request because someone voiced that to us a couple days ago. So we got a hold of Caltrans. They advised us that the signal detection there at the intersection is damaged. So they're going to schedule repairs to get that, back up and running again so that the signal changes much quicker than what it is today. And I think that might be it, that it's in terms of all the notes I took.
Thank you very much. So before we go to commission discussion, we will open up for our commissioners to ask questions of staff. Now that you've heard the speakers and now that you've, of course, seen the report already. So do we have any questions of staff? And it looks, do we have anybody who has any questions of staff? Commissioner Ferris, please.
I was using my raise hand signal. So
that was really good.
So there's a few questions, and maybe if I can kind of recite a few things, and maybe Jim, can you take some of those down, or whoever might be the best to answer them? I thought I heard someone in the beginning parts of the report that the speed limit on Bridgegate at this particular part is 35 miles an hour, but the average speed that we've seen with what we've seen is 37. I just wanted to get a confirmation that there's no doubt there's some instances where people are going to be over 60, but I just wanted to clarify if I heard that correctly.
Do you want me to answer that now?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and we'll interact it. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, 30. When we did our surveys in October, this is during the pandemic, as someone had mentioned, we didn't have any data for this road in terms of what the daily traffic volumes are and what the speeds are, other than the radar survey that we use to set this speed limit. So we set out our traffic counting devices, which are those rubber hoses that you relay across the street. And we got our daily traffic volume of just about 1,500 vehicles per day. And then those devices can measure speed. And we had an 85th percentile speed of 37 miles an hour, which means 85% of the traffic is traveling up to 37 miles per hour or less. And the speed limit is 35. So that's pretty much, for this type of road, this is very a common speed limit that you see on comparable roads. During the course of a day, there are going to be speeds. They're going to be, up to 10 miles per hour faster. And then there's going to be the drivers who drive significantly slower than.
Certainly, even based on the data, 15% of the people that you did exceeded 37.
Yeah, and it's usually comes out, the data looks like a bell-shaped curve if you were to plot out all the speeds that are measured during the day.
Yeah, so certainly during the pandemic, the number of the traffic volume might be suppressed, but I wouldn't expect that the distribution of speeds would be any different than what we might see at any other time, right? Okay, I just wanted to get a sense if I had heard that right. Second thing was you had mentioned with respect to like the crosswalks or any of these other things, you had mentioned kind of a continuous pedestrian traffic as being one of the kind of like threshold conditions as to consider that. I gather, though, based upon what I'm hearing, is that the concerns are less about continuous pedestrian traffic and more about the times at which there's a significant amount of pedestrian traffic, mostly children trying to get back and forth from Westlake Elementary and doing school traffic. So there's going to be surges in where that is. So are there particular ways for us to take that into account with respect to what we do? I don't want there to be this sense of a policy that has to be continuous, but of course the issue isn't relating to a continuous pedestrian traffic. Does that make any sense?
Well, our crosswalk marking guidelines that we've adopted, we do look at sort of a continuous flow of traffic during the peak times. I think we're looking at about 40 pedestrians crossing on a regular basis. Just by being out there, just judging. Again, this is during the pandemic. School's not in session. Our pedestrian counts are probably not going to be that high. But also keep in mind that on that south side of the street, most of that road has no sidewalk. So if you were to start from the north side to get to the south side, there is no sidewalk there. So if we put in a marked crosswalk, it's going to lead to, the side that has no sidewalk, and that's probably not, the best thing that you want to encourage is to guide a pedestrian where there's no receiving sidewalk.
I completely get that. Is one of the issues the fact that people want to feel that it is safer to cross there anyway, as opposed to wanting to go to a busy. I understand that there is a striped crosswalk at Westlake Boulevard, but that is a busy intersection. People might not want to go there if they feel like there isn't much traffic to cross the road so that they can get to the school without having to deal with that. I feel like that's kind of fundamentally one of the concerning issues that we're kind of being asked to deal with right now, right?
Yeah, I think you are correct. I think people feel that when they see painted lines in the roadway, they feel that that's going to make the location safer. For crosswalks, it's a different story. Crosswalk markings at intersections. I know in the past we've seen reports where the pedestrian collision rates are actually higher when it's marked versus when it's unmarked, because the fact that when it's marked, sometimes the pedestrians crossing, they drop their guard. They see that there's painted lines, there's markings. They're not, paying attention to oncoming traffic because they feel that false sense of security. But when it's unmarked, they're more likely to keep their eyes on oncoming traffic, their head up, not looking at their phone, things like that. So that's another reason why that the data that we're used to seeing is that keeping an intersection unmarked is generally safer than adding in markings.
And you mentioned that in the report, and I think these are, I think, all the challenging issues that we're having to deal with here. The one other thing, one of the other members of the public that came and spoke with us sort of asked, I understand that the policies say these are the reasons why we can't do things. And Zoller's mentioned some of these things are Caltrans. That one's a harder one. Some of these things may be city policies. But is it clear that there is what that difference is, that it's clear that this neighborhood would not qualify under that it seems like they're just under threshold to be able to have the policy go against them? One of the things that I'm just thinking of is that the width of the road is 46 feet. So therefore it would need to be 40 feet for it to be qualified for a 25% or a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, which then gives you the ability to have the speed bumps and a variety of other measures. Not that I want a solution, these things get to be really expensive, but if you reduce if you had hard barriers and reduce the actual roadways to 40 feet, those get to be expensive things. Are those options or are those things that this neighborhood are able to lobby for that are reasonable? I'm just trying to figure out. I think they're looking for the creative ways for them to help their safety issues, right?
Yeah, again, when we have our engineering rules and regulations, we have to more or less follow them. If like the traffic commission, if you feel like this is a neighborhood or the street, there's some special circumstances here that you believe the requirements that staff has to follow, we should deviate from them. You can make a recommendation to council, and then that's something that we can consider. For example, like speed humps. One of the issues with speed humps, this is a collector road. This feeds, we only mailed 320 homes in this neighborhood. It probably feeds over 400. So if you put speed humps on this collector road, the first thing that the fire department, their concern is response time. Again, if you introduce speed humps on a road like this, and this is about a third of a mile long, That's quite a bit of speed humps that the fire truck would have to drive through, say if there was an incident at the very end of the street. So those are,
Yeah.
other issues that have to be, the neighborhood's gonna have
That
to
makes
think
sense.
about.
Yeah. All right, I think those are a number of questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for
Thank
letting
you,
me.
Commissioner Ferris. Other questions? Yes, sir, Commissioner Hayek.
In the write-up under the pros and cons of traffic calming restriping, number 6 says residential properties do not take direct frontage of Bridgegate, side frontage only. If there were residences that did take frontage of Bridgegate, would the recommendation be different?
No, I don't think we would have changed the recommendation. That, in this,
I think that was just a fact for us. I don't know that that didn't bear to the recommendation.
I guess the reason why that's more of a pro for a home that's taking side frontage is that their front window is not, staring right at, if you put in road striping, versus if it's, they're taking side frontage, their front window is looking, directly across the street on the side street that they front. If that makes sense.
It does. I'm still. So the recommendation would be that's not a determining factor in the recommendation?
No, that's not a determining factor. I guess we just wanted to point out all, for road striping over the years that we've been putting in road striping, just wanted to point out, the things that we've encountered and what's sort of been the benefits, or what are maybe some of the reasons why it would make it more beneficial to put it in versus not putting it in. But if you wanted to dismiss this as a pro, if you believe that that's not a pro, you can dismiss that.
I'm just trying to understand the residents, part of their concerns about the striping piece. If kids aren't playing on front lawns in front of it, and it's on the side of your houses, is not directly visible, what the main concerns would be from a perspective of I guess aesthetics of what it looks like, or having to look at it or such. So, okay. The other thing is so have we done speed enforcement on that road? Like, do we have any data? Has there been, there tickets issued? Has there been any type of follow through from the complaints? And being new, I don't know. So I don't know how these things are generated. The report says that we receive, complaints from residents and such. So are there set numbers, how many complaints we get that dictates movement in this direction, or something that we do? And do we take the steps of doing some kind of speed enforcement first on site before we even get to this point?
Well, typically when we receive concerns like the ones that were voiced here, speeding seems to be the number one issue. We do, they contact the police, or we do pass their concerns on to the police department for enforcement. They did deploy a radar trailer for some time, where it's that equipment that says, your speed is, and it tells the driver that's, driving by what the speed that they're driving to discourage them from speeding.
I'd like to interrupt here for 1 second and give an admonishment to both our commissioners and to our participants listening at home. Please do not send any messages via chat to the commissioners, because it's not available to the whole public, and the commissioners are only allowed to weigh what you were here physically speaking of. So comments on the staff report, the commissioners' comments and all that, I would ask you please not to send it, because it does not fit the criteria of making it available to the public. Go ahead, Commissioner Hayek, if you have any other questions.
So does that, putting up the the speed, I don't know, whatever it's called. But we haven't, so the answer is no. So we haven't done any type of speed enforcement on that road, right?
We have done speed enforcement on that road.
Yeah, maybe Sergeant Patterson might be able to chime in on that.
Yeah, the first part of it is the education with the radar trailer, which was put out there as part of the request. And then based on that and going out there and being present, we've done that. There have not been very many, if any, tickets issued that I'm aware of. I don't know what period of time you're looking for as an answer, but we have been out there. But when the totality of the circumstances of the city, that is a smaller portion of where we can spend our time.
One thing that I'd like staff to explain, particularly to our new commissioners, is the bailiwick that we are in with the police and speed limits. Because years ago, many years ago, over 25 years ago, there was a traffic engineer here in Thousand Oaks. And I believe he went all the way to the state Supreme Court and got a ruling that if the police had people, 85% of the people they stopped over the speed limit, that speed limit could be raised because they were viewed as a speed trap. So if the best thing that I can say, and I would ask staff to explain it more professionally, but it's one of those things of be careful what you wish for, because if you have a ton of people speeding, and people think this is crazy, as do I, but if you have a bunch of people speeding on your street, you may get your speed limit raised. Not likely to happen on a residential street because of other factors, but we should never forget that, because if speeding is a real problem, the police have to tell the truth. And when they have enough people speeding, kiss your old speed limit goodbye. But I'd like staff to explain that a little bit more professionally and efficiently than I did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that goes back to years and years ago. There's a practice called downward speed zoning, where I believe the traffic speed limits were, they were influenced a lot by, the public. So, some of the speed limits were set lower than what the radar surveys that we, our data that shows what most people are traveling, they were set too low. So the courts came down on the cities and said, you have certain speed limits that are set too low. You guys cannot enforce the speed limit unless you reset them properly. So I think we had a handful of those streets in the city. So we had to increase the speed limit by, in most cases, it was 5 miles an hour, because we had them, set too low. In general, the speed limit must be set within 5 miles an hour of that 85th percentile speed. And if the gap is too wide between the 85th and posted, that's when a speed trap comes in, and then the tickets are not upheld in court, and you have to raise the speed limit. But most of our streets right now, we're in real good shape. We did go through a little period where some of the speed limits were increased, but right now we're in very good shape in terms of our speed limits being legal.
Thank you, Mr. Mashiko. We have any more questions, Mr. Hyatt?
Yes. So can I get some clarification on what is the process here? How many complaints do we have to get before we initiate any kind of action, like on this, for example? I mean, I would like to see some data on this to say, we've gotten complaints from 80 residents or 100 residents, or is there some kind of set criteria that we use where we follow up with this? And then what stage is this in as far as a recommended response? Meaning,
first of all, there are no numbers that I've been aware of for 12 years that I've been on the commission. There are absolutely no numbers when it comes to safety. It could be one person's complaint. It could be 3 people complaining after an accident happened. It could be one person complaining who's brand new to the neighborhood, and they have more kids and everybody else in the neighborhood's retired. I don't believe that I have ever seen there be a criteria before something comes to the commission. And that works the other way as well. We may have 25 people complaining about something, and if certain actions aren't taken by those 25 people, it doesn't necessarily come to the commission. So this is a complaint that has been regular for at least 2 people that I'm aware of, both of which I believe spoke this evening. But to my knowledge, and I will always be corrected by staff, to my knowledge, there is never a benchmark when it comes to a safety concern. Is that correct, Mr. Mashiko? Or
Yeah,
anybody
yes,
else who wants to weigh in?
yeah, that's correct. I mean, I mentioned that we looked at, okay, lowering the speed limit, possibility of speed humps, stop signs. We took some measurements of, I believe it's a Willsbrook Court to put in all-way stop sign. So we took our measurements there to see if it qualifies for stop sign control. And then we also evaluated for putting in marked crosswalks. So the answer to all those different engineering solutions, they were not satisfied, and therefore we're down to striping. Striping is something that we can put in. It doesn't have any specific warrants, but if you look at what the concerns are, striping could resolve some of the issues. And so what we're trying to do here is, we're taking it to the neighborhood. If they're open to the idea of striping, we're asking the question. And right now it seems like they're not open to that idea of striping.
Right, and just
It's interesting. It's interesting, though. I want to make a point that I kept track of. The majority of people were not interested in striping. There is no doubt about those who spoke tonight. I will also tell you that I have counted here roughly 75% of the people who spoke tonight stated that speed is a problem there. They just don't like the aesthetics, or they don't believe striping will work. So I want to make certain that we separate what we're allowed to separate. I care about safety. I care about people's concerns when someone's breaking or appear to be breaking the law. Aesthetics are very low on the totem pole because we're not the planning commission. We're not a design review board. We're here solely to deal with safety. So I want to make certain that everybody knows that we did get, all but 2 of the comments or 3 of the comments did not like striping, or they wanted minimal striping. But of those, 75% speeding was a problem. So I want to make sure we don't forget that. And I'm sorry for cutting you off, Mr. Haydari.
Yeah, no, I was just going to also comment that while there isn't a criteria to elevate issues or to evaluate streets for safety improvements, for each of the selected alternatives, many of them we've been discussing, there are defined criteria that are set and approved by either the state or the city council for, such as we discussed earlier, the speed humps and the stop signs and so forth. So there are numerical criteria for those. And in this particular instance, we do have data in terms of traffic counts and speeds that were obtained. Again, it has been mentioned that they were obtained during a period of time where there were suppressed traffic counts at that point in time. And that could be one option, is to reevaluate as the schools are gearing up seemingly for a full opening in the fall. So things could continue to be evaluated. But at the moment, generally we have a blank slate out there. The street doesn't have any significant striping. There are some signage and so forth, but it's kind of a blank slate to make the traffic, calming measures with striping that has been done elsewhere in the city. And empirically, the idea is when you narrow a lane, people will drive a little more cautiously than they will if they have the entire 46 foot of blacktop in front of them to kind of drive through.
So
other questions, Mr. Hyatt?
Along those lines, then, what I would say, what I would like to see is, we're making these statements as to that, that it's going to slow traffic, people are going to stay within the lanes, it's going to control speed. Well, what I would like to see, are there any type of any other road in the city where we have done this similar? I know it's not going to be exact, but something parallel, where we did these took data beforehand and then took some data post to say, yes, striping does work, right? And I understand that the striping pieces on main roads are one thing, but through residential streets, I think may be different. So that's something that I would say, hey, you know what? We did this on road X, Y, and Z. Here was the data beforehand, and here's the data after, to show that, I'm just looking for that justification. I want to support this, but I'm looking for that justification to say that, yeah, we're going to stripe the street and it's going to have an impact.
Yeah. We don't have the data with us right now, but we do have speed data that we periodically record for streets, and we can cross-reference that with some of these improvements that have been made. I will say that it's not going to be an appreciable, you're not going to see a 10-mile-an-hour drop just with striping. I mean, that you need more physical barriers and to try to achieve something like that. However, as we mentioned earlier, it looks like the traffic speed data that was collected matches the speed limit of the street, generally 35 and 37. So that doesn't seem to be, an area that's a great variance from the posted speed limit.
Yeah, I do want to
I think
add.
there's many benefits to striping that go beyond, but Mr. Mashiko, then let's get the rest of Commissioner Hayek's questions, and we still have Commissioner Pletcher with questions, and yet we still have discussion later.
Yeah, I do want to add, I don't believe there was a street like this where we have a blank slate to work with and then we add in striping and perform a before and after study. I believe the similar streets that are listed in the report, I think all those streets were striped already when the developments were built. This is one of those situations where when this development was built, the decision was made just to keep the road unmarked. And now, there's concerns being raised because of the way, with that wide, with a roadway, you have a lot of leeway where you want to drive in the road.
Other questions?
I'll let somebody else go first.
Commissioner Pletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to address, we haven't had an opportunity to discuss, two of the public comments tonight mentioned insufficient notice. And I just want to confirm attachment 5 is the copy of the residential notification letter received by the neighbors, correct? Because that would indicate it did have proper June notice and not the March notice as was mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking at attachment 5. There was an error in the bottom paragraph where it lists a March 17th meeting date.
I see it now. Yeah,
that's the part where the residents were discussing. But the top of the letter, the date of June is correct, and the meeting date is correct.
Okay, because my biggest concern obviously is notice, and being at a public meeting, you have that correct notice on there. Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to come back to that. Kind of coming back to what the chair said, and Commissioner Ferris mentioned it, I think kind of encompassing some of his comments. Can you just confirm with me, because we have so much of the neighborhood on, a lot of the way we do things and the way we operate are really based on state law and traffic manuals written by really California, the state of California. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We have a couple rules and regs that our city council has adopted, like the speed humps and the crosswalk marking policy, but usually 99% are more or less from the state.
And especially with regard to speed limits and what is in a residential zone, you'd find what can be considered 25 miles an hour, what can be considered 35 miles an hour. That's largely a vehicle code issue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you're correct. That is a vehicle code issue.
Okay. Obviously within reason, we have some ways of going around that. On the, let me find it in the staff report just so I can reference it properly. The parking issue, you mentioned in the staff report that the city is currently in the process of, this is page 3 of the staff report, just to about midway down. The city is currently in the process of restricting parking along the south side of the street in response to a petition from the neighborhood. That was encompassed in a lot of our public comments tonight, but it doesn't seem to be part of what we're being asked to decide. It sounds like it's already being handled and addressed. Is that correct? Or are we to also kind of address the parking issue?
No, you're
That's
not
not before
asked.
us tonight.
You're not asked to look at the parking issue. That's something that we're handling separately. We're making a decision whether or not it should be a no parking anytime or no overnight restriction. I think people made some comments regarding that.
Yeah, and that's really the only reason I'm bringing it up, is just because it was part of public comment. I want to just be very clear for the folks listening tonight what's really before us and then what is already being addressed and handled by staff. I think it's an important distinction so that we don't lose any of our audience. Sorry, I just had one more. Again, coming down to your staff report on page 6, about midway through, and I think this was addressed a little bit in Commissioner Hayek's comments or answers to his questions. You mentioned the recommended course of action is an incremental approach to problem solving. So assumably the actions we could take tonight are really a first step. And I think you mentioned earlier that city staff could essentially keep looking at the issue and seeing if any of those warrants or thresholds are met later on as we get out of the pandemic, open up our schools, and see how the traffic patterns may change. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Generally, when we look at traffic solutions, not one thing is going to fix everything. So you always can start small and then work your way up on these measures.
Okay, and I think again that's an important distinction to make here tonight. Is we have options before us. Traffic patterns change, things change. We can still continuously look at this issue and address it. But finally, actually, that last comment, it's more of a comment, so I'll reserve that for later on in the discussion.
Let's leave that for discussion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. After we've heard some of these questions, Commissioner Ferris, please.
Thank you. I just did have one more question, and I think this kind of comes back into I get the sense that one of the main concerns of pedestrian traffic and crossing is because of the pedestrian traffic going to school. And do they currently have like a crossing guard or something there to be able to help mitigate any of those traffic concerns? Sorry.
Do we know, Mr. Haydari? I thought one of our speakers mentioned that there was a crossing guard, but I don't know if that.
Yeah, the crossing guards are typically reserved for right adjacent to the school, and they would not be located at this distance away.
And the reason I ask is that makes complete sense. Is that it would be closer to the school, but it seems like this is it's a pedestrian thoroughfare for school-age children potentially to get to the school, which is in the area, but maybe not immediately adjacent. I don't know if that is something that is able to be looked into, because it seems like that would be something that's they want the traffic to stop, certainly to help pedestrian traffic. The stop sign's not going to do it. The crossing, the crosswalk painting isn't going to do it. I mean, those are the things that we've kind of talked around. Are there solutions to deal with the real problem, which seems to be coming to our attention? That's the only question I wanted to know if that was possible. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions of commissioners? Okay. Staff, is there anything I'm missing before I go forward? Then I guess what I will do is put forth a motion just to get us get a motion on the table for discussion purposes. I think that's probably the way for us to begin a solution here. I believe that recommendation of, if I'm correct in my notes here, the preferred option between 1 and 2 by staff was option 1. Is that correct?
It Was the diagram that showed the turn lane? I believe that's option B.
Option B, I'm sorry.
Yeah, attachment 3.
So
however, recall that we provided an option C and D as well tonight with some additional concept sketches that could be implemented as well, or any combination of them, or even a center line stripe only as it was one of them.
So what I'm going to do is to put forth a motion that supports staff recommendation for option B, so that we can get something on the table for discussion. I also want to say that particularly with traffic, but almost everything, but particularly with traffic, nothing whatsoever is foolproof, okay? Unless we were to have a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week police force at every single intersection and mid-block on every street, nothing is foolproof. I believe that striping is a great initial measure. I do not know if we will need to go further and try and come up with other solutions that we don't have before us now. But I do know that striping does work as a calming measure. That doesn't mean that it wipes out speed violations. It doesn't mean that it wipes out all right-of-way situations as far as whether a person stays in their designated lane or not. But I do believe that it is better than no lane whatsoever. Right now, everything in that area that we're discussing is left to a person's imagination. It gets trimmed a little by a parked car on one side of the road, but I don't think that's a good solution, is to hope that people's imaginations work really well and they can imagine where that center line is and so forth. I also realize that there are things that are off the table. We should also know that one of the reasons that the city council is the only ones who can go against or change from state law is because there's a financial situation to the city. When you go the opposite of state law, the city is financially responsible or financially liable. And so for that reason, I put the option B forward for minimal striping, and that's the motion on the table, and we will open it up now for council discussion and comment. I'm sorry, for commission's discussion on that motion. So who would like to go first? Commissioner Ferris.
I'll kick it off. I think we've seen today that this is a very challenging situation. There's a lot of things here that's been brought to our attention. There's no, I like to say, is like if this were easy, it had already been done by now, right? So I'm at that point where I do see the pros and the cons that have been listed out in the report. And from my review and listening to the testimony and listening to some of it, I'm maybe less, I see less of the pros being true pros, so that whenever it comes into the balance of them, I'm not sure if this is the right solution to move forward with in order to deal with the situation at hand. One specific comment on the option B. I'm actually not in favor of that one, only because there was a gentleman that brought up a good point, which was it's a turn lane, but the turn lane only makes sense if you're coming east out of the thing, because that's the only place where you can end up turning. If you have this other thing, like there's no ability to turn left as you head west. You're going straight into, there are no roads there. So the only thing that option B does is it creates, more lanes and limited lanes for people to move through, but it may just be temporary and people may feel compelled that it's not something that's useful in what's there. I also am, striping, I like striping in my neighborhood. I can also understand you're right next to this green belt, and the striping sort of it does change the aesthetic of there. It was listed as a con in the staff report, and I empathize with that. I think that for the reasons why I don't think it's going to address the issues at hand, for that reason, I'm probably not in favor of the motion. But again, I think it's more, you're trying to figure out, is it 51-49 one way or another? I think this is a really, really tough decision. So, and I appreciate staff's, I think, diligent work in trying to really lay a lot of these things out and being responsive to the neighborhood. So whether we fall yay or nay on a motion, I just want to make sure we're all understand. There's a lot of good hard work here. So.
Other commission comments?
I'll jump in, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you. I think a lot like Commissioner Ferris, I struggle with the idea of striping as being a solution, but I keep coming back to I keep coming back to what, Mr. Chair, you said, and this was my comment that I reserved, is really it's a safety mechanism. It's safety is what our concern is. Safety is what this body's concern is. And I look at, so if I vote against and this motion were to fail, or if it is the will of this group, nothing gets done. And the problems still remain, the safety issues still remain, and at best, we have city staff that's going to address the parking issue on the south side. And then I also kind of struggled with why option B, and I came back to what Commissioner Ferris mentioned on the public comment, being, that seems kind of silly to put a middle turn lane in there. But then I also looked at it from the safety standpoint, Sergeant, I'm going to try to pretend I know the traffic code, follow it all when I say this, but you shouldn't be traveling in the center lane, turn lane, really at all, unless if you're pulling in the lane to turn. So I also kind of look at this as a very smart thing by staff, as saying, well, in theory, if we have vehicles that are following the law, they may be speeding, but now they're really limited in the direction, limited in the lane. The lanes are very, very trimmed. And hopefully that accomplishes the overall goal, is to reduce the speed. So, and I also came back to, the question I asked Mr. Mashiko is, it's an incremental step. It's not going to solve the problem tomorrow. It's not going to solve the problem, in the summer when they get all this thing painted. But I think it's the right step to solve or begin to address this issue. So I'm on the side of supporting option B and staff's recommendation, because I don't see the other options. I mean, I'd love to see, dedicated bike lanes in there. That's just a personal preference. But if we reduce the south side to no parking, I think the bikes will figure out where they can and cannot go. I think the safety mechanism for, bikes coming out of that area and going along Westlake to go around the lake, and I think that'll be addressed. So, I'm generally supportive of option B, but, I kind of come back again to what Commissioner Ferris said. It's a 51-49, because aesthetically, I don't think it's necessarily the best, but with the options we have based on state law and what regulations we have to operate under, I think it will begin to hopefully address speed, because they may not, our public comments largely said there is a speed problem there. And if safety is our priority, then we should be looking at ways to address speed. Option B is our way. So I'm generally going to support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. Commissioner Hyde, do you have comments?
So if we're saying that there's a speed problem there, it's based on comments, but the data revealed that 85% of the cars coming down are below 37 or below. What is that in comparison to a regular residential street? Is that higher or lower? Or is that around where residential streets sit?
Well, am I to understand, or can we understand as a group that 15% of the drivers are over 37 miles per hour on that street, if 85% are 37 and under? Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, that's correct.
So the question is, how many of them are over? Okay.
No,
I don't know.
That's not the question. The question is, on a normal residential street, is 15% over typical, or is that high, or is it low?
One thing I do want to insert here, though, so we don't make any errors. This is not a normal residential street. A normal residential street is 25 miles per hour. And this is 35 miles per hour. Is that a correct statement on my part?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't want to put words in Commissioner Hayek's mouth, but if you were to compare this on similar, I don't know how many residential streets we have in Thousand Oaks that are 35 miles an hour. Okay, but there is a significant incremental difference between 25 miles per hour and 35 miles per hour. So if we all believe this really is kind of a residential street that has the right to be 35 miles an hour, then the way I look at it from a data-driven standpoint is, holy smokes, what percentage of people are over 25 miles an hour on the street? Because that's dangerous to any residential quote unquote area. So do we have any other residential streets that would be 35, or many other residential streets that would be 35 miles an hour or greater?
Okay, when you're talking about residential streets, you're looking at streets that are posted 25 miles an hour?
No, streets that are posted 35. I'm trying to compare, I'm trying to understand that what I think Commissioner Hayek may be looking for is a little bit of an apples to apples comparison, either from a data or from a result standpoint. Is Commissioner Hayek, is that correct?
So in the report, Parkview Drive and Campus Drive, both similar, 35 leading to a 25 mile per hour zone, and Michael Drive, a little bit different, 30 to a 25. So we've been saying that striping helps, but we haven't presented data that shows it helps in these types of streets. We've brought up roads like Arbalest and other main roads and thoroughfares with speed limits of upwards of 50 miles per hour. So my question is, we're acknowledging that speeding, I understand that it's a safety issue no matter what, whether the road's 25, 35, 50, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to look for some calibration as to, is 15% of traffic going above the speed limit? It's something that, and I have no gates to compare it to. That's what I'm looking for. So if in a similar street like Parkview or Michael or Campus Drive, if you measure, you do the same kind of study on those streets, is 15% something that you're going to see on, because you're not going to see 100% on any street. So you're always going to see above and below. So is 15% in that range where you would expect to see vehicles outside of the posted speed limit?
Yeah, I think this directly correlates to how the speed limits are set. So because they're set based on the 85th percentile, the fact that the 35 and 37 are very close to each other, and that 15% of the traffic is traveling above 37, that matches right up with how the speed limit was set for the street, which was set for 35 miles an hour based on the fact that 85% of the traffic is traveling below that and 15% is traveling above that. So any 35 mile an hour street in the city, if it's properly calibrated, 15% of the traffic approximately will be exceeding that posted speed limit. So what's making this different is that it's feeding into a residential neighborhood. So we're comparing it mentally to a 25 mile an hour residential area. And it's obviously, the prevailing speed is faster. That's what's posted.
The challenge that we've always had, as we've always strived to have some kind of data support, not just for making a decision, but for going back and judging whether that decision was good, bad, fair, or needed to be looked at again, is that there are really no similar situations. Every situation is different. I can tell you what was explained to me many years ago. If you have a situation that lived with the kids that were under 16 years old, for the first 16 years, their parents moved in there. As soon as all those kids got cars, all the data changed instantly. So, you know, we're dealing with, for want of a better way of saying it, we're dealing with a moving target always. That's why I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree when it comes to data. So that's why I reduced it to a simple, I want to deal with safety. And when I hear from accidents that it's not safe, or I hear from neighbors who are against the solution that it's not safe, that it is a speeding problem, to me, this is just an incremental, I don't even want to call it an incremental solution. This is an incremental step to see which directions we have to go to. I know that staff has done so much work on this that staff has a variety of incremental steps. So what I think that if this I think is a medium interim solution. I think this is something that staff is going to look at a long time and bring us back into it if necessary. But I think we need to remember that it is incremental, and there's no decision that we will make here ever that is foolproof. And there's also no decision that we can make only based upon data, because if we were fortunate enough for that to happen, then our staff wouldn't need a commission. They could deal with data helping to make those decisions a little bit easier. It's not possible to get data when everything is not, all the measurements are not the same. I will tell you one little bit of data that I have heard, or that I would like to use in regards to the road diets that have taken place already. Complaints went down significantly. To me, when complaints go down, and then I would next go to, do accidents go down, reported accidents, then I would go to the police and say, well, have you checked, did speed go down as well? All of those things play into it for me. The only thing that never plays into it for me is aesthetics. I think that safety is more important than that, but I hope staff has answered, and that
just one more for sake of comparison, Parkview, which is 35 feeding into a 25 similar as this, has the center turn lane that was implemented into it. So it's not unstriped, it has striping, which includes the center turn lane.
But, and I think for me, sorry to jump in, Mr. Chair, but when we turn to the data and worry about the 85th percentile and they're going 37, at some point when they cross over into an official residential neighborhood, when that speed limit comes down to 25, for me, the issue is now you have a significant larger group that is, if they don't reduce their speed by 10 miles an hour, they're now a larger chunk of that portion should be speeding in theory. In theory, if we're just going off of, obviously, you know, hard data would change that if we had that, but that's my bigger issue is you're encouraged. I mean, unfortunately, it's just the way that street is laid out that we're encouraging, you know, if we don't try to trim it at that 35-mile-an-hour section, we're going to have an increased group speeding into that larger neighborhood. So
I'd also like to ask staff a question for us to consider. In other areas, other states, I've not seen it in California, they use something that is loosely referred to as a bot or a bot dot, whatever it is, Department of Transportation dot, entering into a turning lane. Okay, so the protectors at either side of a turning lane, and I apologize for the dog, but I want to try my best to make this point. Are we able to put those, are we able to put those dots that have a negative impact on your tires, that, you know, give you a headache by crossing over them? Are we able to use those entering in and out of a turn only lane? Because to me, that would be one hell of a speed deterrent as well. You only do it once before you realize you've knocked the alignment out of your car, and now you're going to pay a bill for speeding if it's not a speeding ticket. So my question is, do we allow those anywhere in the city? Have we ever had a policy with that?
No, we really haven't. I don't think we've used those. Maybe years ago, those were used at some point. But the problem with the rumble strips is that, you know, the vibration, the noise, especially if it's near homes, I think that might create a lot of complaints, but
Yeah,
it doesn't get them. It does get the message across to the driver. You know, they feel that vibration. They're probably going to steer clear of driving over those or reduce their speed.
Okay, Commissioner Hayek, more questions and concerns?
So I want to go back to something Mr. Pletcher said. I mean, if this doesn't pass, does this mean we don't do anything, or does this go back to staff and staff tries to come up with something else?
I would ask staff to answer it. I would say that this is the smallest basic incremental process I'm aware of, but Mr. Mashiko, Mr. Hindari, and Mr. Fatimi is no longer on with us. What say you?
Yeah, well, you know, I think what we're trying to do here is look for a solution that, you know, finds that middle ground that people can accept, but at the same time is going to be effective. And, you know, as we mentioned, striping, it can do some things. It may reduce speeds 1 or 2 miles an hour, you know, long term, but it's not a permanent change in driver behavior. But at the same time, the difficulty here seems to be that the neighborhood disagrees with the aesthetic portion of it. But, you know, given all the descriptions of what situations occur out there, striping seems to address a lot of those issues. But, you know, again, if this issue is dismissed, you know, we can keep working with the residents and see what else we can come up with over time. And possibly next fall, when the schools start up again, we can do some new measurements, see what the sort of normal traffic conditions are, and make a judgment based on that.
And also another alternative, if we're talking about incremental approach, would be to do the center line striping only as a starting point, and then do the elements that Mr. Mashiko mentioned, and then, you know, evaluate further so that we can hone in on the particular option that would find that middle ground. If it's of benefit, we can put up those 4 images again as the alternatives. Since it's been, you know, maybe an hour or 2 now since you've laid eyes on them, but it's up to the commissioners if that would be beneficial.
I think that's a very good suggestion.
Okay, I can endeavor to do that here. The center line striping only. And if I pull up the other image, are you seeing the alternative images, or is it just a center line striping?
What we're seeing right now is just the center line image. Don't know that really solves. It is the least of all the incremental approaches, but okay, that's all we're seeing.
Let me then go to the next level. Here we go. This was a modified alternative to what was in the I think option A in the packet. This one we could probably do without that cross hatching. There were some comments from the residents that the cross hatching was not desirable, and so it's been blacked out basically. So it's just this edge line. This was implemented on on Lakeview Canyon, a couple of years ago also, to help keep cars away from the homes to a degree and kind of channel them, keep them in a little more of a tighter space so they don't have the whole wide street. And this was the alternative with the center line striping and the bike lanes. That was also there. And then lastly, this was the center turn lane. This is the option B center turn lane, which also has blacked out, so it wouldn't have the cross hatching.
Okay, so the center turn lane is not up yet.
Oh, interesting. All right. Give this another whirl here. Center turn lane is this one, I believe.
Didn't we say didn't someone say there's no frontage on this road? Isn't that the front of houses?
There's frontage on this road. There are homes that have frontage.
This is a 25-mile-an-hour section, I believe.
And
Or approaching the 25-mile-an-hour section.
The last block there, I believe there is maybe about 4 or 5 homes that take direct frontage.
Yeah. But the solution will be implemented all the way down to Westlake Boulevard, which most of it has nobody taking direct frontage.
So the last item that you've shown on the screen right now, that is option B, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so let me ask this question while we're having discussion. What would be, if we were to look at, just for the sake of our discussion, let's say B is the most severe incremental approach. What would be the next step down from B, in your opinion?
Yeah, I would defer to Mr. Mashiko on that one, but
Yeah, the next step down, one level down from this would be the option A, where it's instead of that turn lane in the middle, just a center line stripe with those shoulders, the edge lines to define the shoulders, but no cross hatching.
Okay, so the center line to divide to define the shoulders. I'm sorry, the center line and the lines to define the shoulders would be
one level below this.
One level below, and if didn't produce a significant desired effect, you would come back to the commission, or if we wanted to this evening, would we have the ability to say, let's go with A, allowing staff to move to B after the school year, should that be necessary, or do you feel it needs to come back to the commission if we were to go with B? I'm sorry, with A.
Well, if we implement something like A, we would go ahead and do some after studies, before and after studies, and then provide the data and bring the before and after data back to the commission so you can see what the results were.
Okay, so I would you please put A on the screen, and what I would like to do is to ask our commissioners' opinions on option A. As again, we've used the word incremental over and over again as an incremental approach, starting with A. I'd like to get our commissioners to weigh in on that, and we'll start in the same order we went last time. Let's start with Commissioner Ferris, Commissioner Pletcher, and wind up with Commissioner Hyatt. Commissioner Ferris, how do you feel, if differently at all, about an incremental approach starting with A?
So I don't think it changes how I would vote on the measure, although I will say it does eliminate what potentially is not as functional part of option A, having a turn lane that doesn't provide any functionality for people going west. It sort of resolves that issue, but I don't think it changes it weighs it only a little bit, but not enough to change the vote. So.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Pletcher.
Could I ask, if we were to go with the option A, how wide are those lanes versus option B with the lanes with that center turn lane, for lack of a better term? Is there any difference with how wide those lanes are that are drivable?
Yeah, under option A and or B, I think we would try to keep the travel lanes very similar, 11 feet in width. What changes is the width of those shoulders, where the edge lines. The edge lines would be further towards the middle of the street if you just have just a center line, but then the edge lines would be closer to the homes because you're adding in that center turn lane under B. So the width of the travel lanes change, but it's just the width of the shoulders change under each of those scenarios.
Got it. Understood. I have to tell you just real quick, and I'll throw it out there, that I do like the option without the stripe shoulders. Having that kind of on the table is interesting if it means that staff is going to continue to look at it and possibly consider coming back with some proposed changes. I think it was option, you had up on your screen, I think it was option B number 1, or it just removed those striped shoulders. That was kind of something that I would like to bring up to my fellow commissioners.
I think, I don't know. I'll go with, I want to hear what everybody has to say. I will tell you that we need to eliminate one before we start discussing either another or a hybrid of the two, because we don't have the benefit of having them on the screen during all of this discussion. So I was under the guise of trying to cause some level of consensus, as well as calming people's concerns that we weren't incremental enough. That was the only reason why I suggested considering option A. So I think what I'm hearing is doing option A doesn't accomplish anything. So let's now go forward with any other comments that commissioners have, because it won't do any good. It's not going to build consensus to go with option A, from what I'm hearing. I want to let Commissioner Hayek, by all means, weigh in. Do you have comments, Commissioner?
Is the road 46 feet all the way through from the 35 to the 25 mile per hour zone?
Yes, it is 46, pretty much uniform, and then it transitions to that 38 feet width as you get to the very end.
Okay.
Kind of an invitation to speed. Other comments? Okay. We have a motion on the table. Let's go ahead and decide whether or not it's viable. Ms. Vasquez, can you call for the vote?
Can real quick, Mr. Chair,
hold on just a second.
Can we just reiterate the motion one more time to be clear what we're voting on?
We're voting on option B, as supporting option B as presented by staff.
Is that option B potentially without the additional hatching? Is that what I heard earlier?
Let's have the commission weigh in on that and see if it means anything to, and let's start this time. Let's start with Commissioner Hyatt, then Ferris, then Pletcher. Commissioner Hyatt, does that change anything for you if the hatching is eliminated?
No.
Commissioner Ferris?
No.
I would not necessarily mind having the hatching eliminated. I think it's a little bit cleaner, and it is a step down in terms of striping, but at least it is another incremental step that we can take to kind of find that happy medium.
Well, if it doesn't change anything, then it doesn't make a difference if we eliminate the hatching. That's my confusion.
Well, I think it addresses some of the aesthetic issues that were raised by some other commissioners, and is something that I struggle with, and I think that's something that we heard from public comment is a concern as to aesthetics. So I realize safety is the important mechanism here, but it does kind of further address some of those other issues.
Okay, so here's what I think we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and call for the vote for the motion as it stands. And if we eliminate that motion, if that motion in fact fails, then we'll look for another motion that may be more desirable. So with that, let's call for the motion as it was made to support staff option B.
Okay, Commissioner Ferris?
No.
Commissioner Hayek?
No.
Commissioner Pletcher?
No.
Chair Lemo.
Yes. So the motion fails. And what do we do next, folks? What's the suggestion?
Could I ask staff to possibly put up, it'd be without the turning lane, stripe down the center, without the hatching. I think that was the last one you had up on your screen.
Is that with or without bike lanes?
I think it's without the bike lanes. I apologize if I get that incorrect.
Let me attempt this one.
Yes. I will make the motion to approve this as a recommendation, being the basis of it begins to accomplish the possibility of reducing the speed, and also takes into some consideration the aesthetics and some of the public comment we heard tonight, trying to reach that happy median that staff really is looking for, in the direction that staff is looking for, to really continue to work and bring down this issue. So I would propose what's on the screen as a recommendation for approval. I don't know where my other commissioners are on that, but at this point, I'm looking for that happy medium. I think I've kind of changed, listening to further discussion and listening to further public comment and listening to where we've ended up here, that happy medium. And what really changed me, just to be very clear, is that staff is willing to continue to analyze the issue, analyze the problem. And as things change, maybe they come back and we reapproach this with further striping or some other things that are made.
I have a question to staff. Do we have a drawing of what this looks like with bike lanes?
We did have the alternative with the bike lanes. It's slightly different. We could fine tune things a little bit, but did the screen change to the one with the bike lanes now?
Not yet.
All right. The sharing is being very finicky. It's going one at a time. Here's the one I was just alluding to, I believe. This is essentially it. It has the same edge line, and then in addition, it has a kind of a defined bike lane to promote biking.
What option would we call this? And Commissioner Pletcher, would you include the bike lane
C, I suppose.
would you amend your motion to include the bike lane?
I would, because there is no real distinct difference. As long as there's no real distinct difference in the way that those look, and they don't look different to me, I would amend my motion to include the bike lanes.
Okay, so the motion is, I don't remember what we're calling this option.
Option C.
This is option what?
C.
D is in cat.
C, and that includes the bike lane, correct?
Yes.
So that's the motion that's on the table. Let's start with comment. Commissioner Ferris?
Yeah, and maybe I'll try and clarify. Again, I feel this is a challenging issue. I think Commissioner Pletcher's maybe mentioned it, is that if this is in fact an incremental approach, and that we will still have staff continue to work on what we think is the right thing to do, the question is whether if we're still going to be working on it, is striping this neighborhood the right thing to do while we're working on the best solution. And what I'm hearing from aesthetics point of view is they do not want their Bridgegate striped like other urban roadways, if this in fact will not address the issues that they're looking to have addressed. And for that reason, I think that's why it's a hard decision, but I'm really not in favor of any of the striping options at this stage. So I would vote no.
Thank you. Commissioner Heichel.
I mean, until I see data that shows that striping a street has an effect on speeding, I mean, I have a hard time supporting any striping on the street.
All right, let's go ahead and call for the vote, and then I'll give you an idea of what we're going to end up doing. Ms. Vasquez, could you please call for the vote?
Commissioner Ferris,
No.
Commissioner Hayek,
No.
Commissioner Pletcher,
Yes.
Chair Lemo.
Yes.
The Traffic Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and interested parties may attend the City Council meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic Commission shall file a written appeal and pay an appeal fee with the City Clerk Department within 14 calendar days of this decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The appeal fee will be refunded only if the City Council overturns the Traffic Commission's decision. An appeal form is available from the recording secretary.
Just a clarification, I guess on a 2-2 vote, I guess that does not constitute approval. Because we had, was that the final vote, two yay and 2 no?
The way that I would defer to the city attorney. I believe it has to do with the way that it is worded. In other words, if the motion was made, well, let's leave this to the city attorney to explain instead of me trying to.
The motion did not.
Go ahead.
The motion did not pass.
Okay, so it did not pass.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is that these solutions are brought back to discuss with the full commission on at our next meeting. I am a big believer in the fact that to not decide, unfortunately, is the same as a bad decision very often, particularly when we're plugging into a safe situation. I think that we have a ton of data, not the least of which is that while people said there was only 2 accidents in 4 years, we have another person who testifies that he's averaging at least 1 or 2 accidents every year since he's lived there. So I think that we need to get a more definitive approach from a full commission. And I would ask that an abbreviated version of this presentation take place at our next meeting. Is that, my question for the city attorney is that right and proper? Or when a motion fails, is it done until another solution is brought by staff? What is the proper way to handle this?
You can request that it be brought back on the next regular meeting. And because you're not dealing with the full commission right now, you can certainly do that. You could ask staff to provide some additional data if that would assist you in making your decision. You could ask staff to generate some more data that's not affected by the pandemic. That was one of the concerns. So there's any number of things you can do moving forward. Because you've heard it doesn't mean that you can't hear it again.
Okay, thank you very much. So my suggestion would be that we bring back this item at our next meeting, when we would anticipate having a full commission, and whatever really pertinent data we can get, I would like to have available to our commissioners. You know, I would tend to think that we are going to get different numbers in the fall. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I feel somewhat a sense of guilt by laying things off to the fall just because we want to get more information, and we tend to know what that information is going to be. Okay, but you know, if that's the way it needs to be, that's the way it needs to be. So I would like staff to make a decision of whether they feel it's better to bring it back at the next meeting. Let's assume that our next meeting, I don't know when we have to be shut down. We're shut down in July or August.
August is when the commission will be dark.
Okay, so I think realistically, our next meeting is going to be in September anyway. Is that right?
Well, I think we have a meeting next month. We'll have an
Okay,
item.
so I don't know if it's if it's worth it to bring it back next month. Let's do this. Let's see what. Let's come back with an abbreviated presentation with one of your recommendations, staff, for us to choose from is delaying a decision until after measurement is set up in the fall, and let's let the commission vote on that. So whatever recommendations you make, if you happen to make all 4 of these or you make 2, add to that, please, a rationale to why we would wait, when the dates that we expect measurement to take place, and when that data would be reported back to us. And let's take a look at that at our July meeting, please. Okay, we're going to move ahead.
Chair Lemo.
Don't we need I think we need a motion on this matter. Sorry to jump in, Mr. City Attorney.
I don't believe that we do need a motion on this matter. The matter was disposed of by the failure of a motion. I am making a request, which I believe is my right as the chair, that we bring this back as an agenda item in July, with one option being placed in front of the commission that we can also defer to specific data-driven dates. Again, to the city attorney, am I overstepping my bounds here?
My point, Chair Lemo, typically you do have that right, as any member of the commission does, because this has been heard by the members, the commissioners. I think they should be allowed to weigh in on whether that would be futile or whether that would be productive. And I think that would be a prudent course of action in this case.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the time to do that. The reason that I'm making an assumption that it may or may not be futile is because we're making another decision with a short commission. But okay, I want to follow the rules. So what is it that we're going to discuss now? Because I do not need to make a motion. We just want them to weigh in. Is that correct?
Correct. Now, the reason I bring it up, Chair, is that if you're asking us the staff to come back with just a recommendation on whether or not they want to do any more research or that just for informational purposes, that's one thing. If you're asking staff to come back with something for you to rule on, to make a decision on, that I think would be something that your other commissioners would want to weigh in on.
Here's my issue.
Without anything more.
Okay, here's my issue. The only reason we would reconsider a decision is because we don't have a full commission. Other than that, a no vote is a no vote, but we don't have a full commission. And so I thought it would be very beneficial for us to have that. You know, at this point, I don't know what mechanism you use to bring this back. And I think it's wrong for us, based purely on aesthetics for the most part, to ignore the facts that we have been given, make a ruling, and then not gather more data behind those facts and take a look at it. So, you know, at this point in time, I want to have the most expeditious thing to move on in our agenda at this point, because we're now crossing over into no longer making judicious decisions, but beating a horse, and the horse is dead.
Chair,
So, yes,
Chair,
sir.
I think you can ask your other commissioners if they have any objection to your proposed course of action, and that would be sufficient.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's what we'll put. Let's go around the horn. Anyone have any objections to that suggestion?
And may I ask, Mr. Chair, the suggestion is to re-agendize this for the next meeting to hopefully have a full commission.
That's the first part. And the second part is to add whatever options that they come forward with in their abbreviated presentation, to add an option that says, we're going to do physical monitoring when the school year starts in this time period, and be back to you on the October.
Additional information that could be helpful for the commission.
That is correct.
I personally, I don't think that that's a bad thing to do. So I think that with an odd number of people at a commission meeting, you get clarity as to what the decision is. So I wouldn't be against it.
Commissioner Pletcher.
I'm fine with it. I only wanted to raise the issue for Brown Act purposes and making sure we're just following procedure. So I'm fine with it.
Commissioner Hyatt.
So are you saying to bring it back with a vote on striping something and then study it after the fact?
I'm not saying anything of how the outcome would be at the next meeting. I'm saying that we're bringing it back, and one of the options is to make no decision other than to say we're going to go with study only, enhanced study only. That's one of the options that'll be added.
But didn't you just ask staff to come back with one option?
No, I did not. I asked staff to come back with anywhere from the 2 to 4 options they have now, and to add an option to it that is study only on a date or a period certain. That's what I asked. And I'm pretty sure that that is what has been the understanding of Commissioner Ferris, Commissioner Pletcher. Is that correct? Okay, so that's, we're asking you to weigh in on that as well.
So if we're going to bring it back with the same information, then I don't see a point in bringing it back.
Okay.
Until we have additional data. Like I said, I want to support it, but I would like to see some data showing that striping a street has an impact on speeds. I mean, that's all that I'm asking to show here. If we're saying that this is a measure that's going to, for safety reasons, control speed.
Again,
I would like to see some data on that.
I want to wrap this up. So I want to make it clear.
I have the floor. I'm speaking, right? So can I finish what I'm saying? You asked us to.
If it's possible, yes, I'd appreciate it.
Can I finish?
We'll see. I'd like you to finish.
You're making comments that we are ignoring the data, and I take, you can say that you're ignoring the data, but I don't think it's appropriate for you to say that we are ignoring the data. So, I like it that if you're going to make comments, you can make comments based upon your opinion and your perspective. Don't include me in the we when you say we, because the vote didn't go your way. So, I don't want it to be that way. We work under the Brown Act. We have an opportunity to voice our opinions. I asked for clarification on data. I brought up aesthetics because aesthetics was brought up in the report, on the frontage issue as a pro. So, I don't think that, I would ask that you refrain from making comments that lump your assumption as to why a decision was or was not made by anyone other than yourself.
Thank you. Let me set the record perfectly straight. When I said we were ignoring data, I meant that 100%, and I'm not going to change that. We have received data that we have reduced speeds in areas where a road diet was used. We have had testimony, all kinds of testimony, including those who oppose. I'm speaking.
Well, you reference the data. I'm asking, where's that data?
The data was provided by staff. They actually quoted intersections streets where they have done road diets in the past. And quite frankly, I was on a commission that voted for a road diet and then heard the report after that it worked. I don't think, and I'm going back 12 years ago, so I will apologize for an aged response. I don't think because I was new on the commission that everything that happened before me no longer existed. And so I'm expecting that same courtesy, but I solved that problem, so we don't need to beat that horse. We were told by staff that there are instances where the road diets have worked, but that there were none that were identical to this. We were also told by staff, and I take this as data, that there are none that are identical to this. So I simply solved the problem, and the problem that I was solving was we're not going to ignore an unsafe situation. I solved that problem as best I could. We've already heard everyone weigh in on the commission. We were weighing in on whether or not it was okay to bring it back. What I've heard is there is a modicum of consensus that we will bring back 2 or 4 of the options that you've already presented. We will add an option that has a specific period certain as to if we decide that we're not happy with those options with the next commission, that one choice we can make is to go to a period specific where we may be able to gather more data. And so that's what I'm going to, with the help and the guidance of the city attorney, that's what I'm suggesting that our staff come back with. And with that, I am going to exercise the option as the chair to close off discussion on this because we do have other items on the agenda that we need to move forward with. So as I bring up the rest of the agenda here, I believe we have at least one more action item. And okay, here we go. And that is having a difficult time getting the computer to bring back up my agenda. Here it is. A local road safety plan. It's an action item presented by our planner, Kathy Naum. Okay, Kathy, the floor is yours under engineer report 6B.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'm doing from the beginning. Okay, can you see that? Yeah, thumbs up or something? Is this being shared?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. And just a little, I like information like this. It should take about 8 minutes for my presentation. So just sit back and just enjoy yourself here.
Thank you.
That's what this is all about. Okay, so thank you, Chair Limo. This evening, you're going to hear a report on the city's draft local road safety plan. The local road safety plan, it's a new traffic safety plan that provides the city with a data-driven analysis, largely based on collision information. The plan identifies traffic safety concerns and prioritizes countermeasures to improve traffic safety. Countermeasures are engineering improvements that enhance traffic safety. The plan looks at collision data citywide and helps us understand what the traffic safety issues are, which help to prioritize corrective measures. For example, rear-end accidents are the most frequent type of collision in the city. By understanding that this is a citywide issue, it also allows us to look citywide on a roadway network for a solution. The conclusions in the plan are data-driven and can be used to explain to the public where the city's priorities are, opposed to an emotional reaction when an isolated collision occurs. Other uses for the plan will be to help prioritize projects in the city's capital improvement budget. It will also help staff be ready to be able to apply for state and federal grants when funding becomes available. And of course, the question is, why are we doing this now? First, the plan was prepared using a Caltrans grant. The grant was in the amount of $72,000 and the city provided an $8,000 match. So to prepare the plan cost $80,000. The importance of the plan is, starting in spring 2022, Caltrans will require cities and counties to have an adopted plan in order to apply for federal highway safety improvement program funds. So the plan is full of data, and although I'm not going to go into all the details, the backbone of the plan is to analyze collisions by type and severity. The chart provides a good summary of the city's collision history for the past 10 years. You can see from the graph that overall collisions, which is the orange line at the top, have decreased slightly over the last 10 years. The reduction is good, but there are also nearly 1,000 collisions per year citywide. Pedestrian and bicycle collisions, which are the green and blue lines, account for about 4% of the total collisions. However, the bicycle and pedestrian collisions account for 25% of killed or severe injuries, as shown in the red line. The plan identified 4 areas of emphasis and are listed on the slide. For each area of emphasis, the plan recommends engineering countermeasures to reduce the collision rates. They range from simple actions such as installation of traffic signs, or can be more involved, such as restriping an intersection or entire road segment. The most common types of collisions include rear end, broadside, and hit objects. One of the most leading collision patterns is rear end collisions, which is largely caused by speeding. Safety concerns related to bicycling and walking is the lack of bicycle facilities at the 101 freeway over and underpasses. Freeway overpasses, including Lynn, Orchard, Bentu Park, and Wendy, experience bicycle-related collisions. Teo Boulevard was a key arterial roadway identified to have a high concentration of bicycle-related collisions. And lastly, nighttime collisions at signalized intersections were also noted to be higher than collisions during the day. According to the collision records, unsafe speed is the second most common collision factor. To address speeding, the police department enforces the speed limit and issues citations to motorists driving more than 15 miles an hour over the posted speed limit on higher volume roads, higher speed roads such as Lynn, Westlake, Canaan, and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. To reduce collisions caused by speeding motorists, the plan recommends installing radar feedback signs on 9 higher speed arterial roadway segments. The plan provides conceptual improvement plans to improve bike access across the 101 freeway. It includes the plans at Lynn, Bentu Park, Orchard, and Wendy Drive. The plans are considered conceptual until Caltrans reviews and approves the detailed engineering drawings. But on this slide, you can see that how this segment of Bentu Park Road can become more bike friendly by providing buffered bike lanes, enhancing the marked crosswalk by installing yield markings known as shark's teeth, and reducing the medium width in order to install a class 2 bike lane between the number 2 through lane and exclusive right turn lane. The city's bicycle advisory team provided comments at their February meeting, and those comments have been incorporated into the plan. Pedestrians that are at high risk of being killed or severely injured in crashes. Between 2015 to 2019, there were 549 crashes involving pedestrians with 4 fatals and 15 severe injuries. The city has 50 marked crosswalks across streets that are at uncontrolled by a traffic signal or an all-way stop. The plan recommends improving 10 of these crosswalks by providing an electronic rectangular rapid flashing beacon warning system with advanced warning flashing beacons. The beacons will be activated by a pedestrian push button when the pedestrian wants to cross the street. The system enhances safety by increasing driver awareness and has proven to increase yield rates for pedestrians. The city recently installed these systems on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. The public says that the flashing warning lights are effective at getting a driver's attention, which causes them to yield sooner than if the warning lights were not present. Staff has confirmed this with field observations. According to the collision data, about 60% of the collisions occur after sundown at 41% of the signalized intersections. You might have seen the new retro-reflective borders at the Caltrans intersections. They have been installed on the on and off ramps along the 101 and 23 freeway. The reflective yellow borders make the signal heads more visible in both daytime and nighttime and serve as reminders that the intersection should be treated as an always stop control intersection when all displays go dark during a power outage. The plan recommends installing reflective backplates at city-owned traffic signals. The plan also includes a section on non-engineering safety measures that target specific areas of emphasis, such as young drivers, bicyclists, peds, and DUI education. For example, it mentions the Start Smart Drivers Education Program that's given by the Ventura County Sheriffs. The Smart Start program educates newly licensed and future licensed drivers on good driving practices and consequences of poor driving behavior. The program raises awareness and is a proactive method to reduce the number of team-related injuries and deaths due to collisions. The plan also provides a program for implementation by providing funding sources, recommending timeframes, responsible agencies, and how to measure progress. I mentioned earlier that Caltrans will require agencies to have a plan to apply for a highway safety improvement program funding in spring 2022. Because the local road safety plan data was available this past fall, I was able to use the data provided in the draft plan to submit application for 4 projects. As you can imagine, we were very excited to find out in April that the city was awarded just over $800,000 for 3 of the 4 projects. These projects include the backplates, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and guardrail improvements. The city needs to provide a match of approximately $70,000 to obtain the $800,000 worth of traffic improvements. So with that, I'll take a breath. The staff recommends, the staff recommendation is in the staff report. Should the traffic commission concur with the recommendation, we expect to forward the recommendation to the city council to formally adopt the local road safety plan later this summer. And that concludes the staff report. We'll be happy to answer any questions of the traffic commission.
Thank you very much. So
you're welcome.
First thing we'll do is open up questions for staff. And the first hand I see is Commissioner Pletcher.
I'm short and sweet here, but I just want to thank you for the presentation and thank you for the report focusing on safety. One quick question. You had your slide up on Ventuin 101 talking about the bike lane safety measures. Is that similar to what?
I'll pull it back up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is that similar to what was done on Westlake Boulevard over the 101? Some of the bike lane safety, because I just remember when I was on the commission earlier and we voted on the Westlake Boulevard sidewalk improvements. That was a big discussion point for us, and I think that was just a phenomenal job what was done for bike safety on there. I just was curious, is that the similar idea?
It's similar. This is even more bike safe with the buffered bike lanes going across the bridge. What's similar is the shark's teeth and the flashing beacons across the crosswalk. But yeah, it's very similar, but it's even, we could say it adds more improvements to make it safer.
Great. And then just want to reiterate my incredible pleasure to see those crosswalks on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Staff did a phenomenal job with that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Heichel.
So I will say that when someone tells me something, I don't consider that data. This report is data. It's based on data. It's I may not agree with all the recommendations in it, but I could see they're based on data. I think the amount of data in here is really informative. I think it was really well put together. So I have to compliment the city team on all this. And I wholeheartedly think that this is something surely that is going to be beneficial for our community. Thank you.
Well, and I think it's important. It is full data. It's an $80,000 report, and that's where you get a lot of data when you get a company that KOA did the project and they did a phenomenal job, and that's why there was a lot of data.
Commissioner Ferris, do you have anything? I didn't see a hand or anything.
Just to laud staff for the report and the thoroughness of this. I'm very interested. The unique aspects of these traffic technology, sort of who would have thought like the reflective backplates actually would. I mean, it's such a simple thing, it seems like, and it's something that provides a lot of awareness about the fact that it's a signaled area. And the one question I did have about the report is from staff's perspective, whenever we analyzing every one of the intersections and it's sort of sorted by the number of incidents, but then therefore compared with the volume of it and the rate at which those things, which do the city generally focus on? Sheer number of incidents, or do we look for hotspots in the rates of collisions as well? Which ones do we generally focus on?
Well, and that's the purpose of this report, is to look at it systemically throughout the city. So we're looking at rates, we're looking at severity, and we're looking at type of collision. So it's all those components all together, instead of exactly that. If there's just, we'll say, a big horrible accident on Westlake Boulevard that gets all the city's attention, it's like, wait, there's other issues going on throughout the city. But yeah, it's the rate, but it's a combination of many things.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
I also want to thank Kathy for the report. I was fortunate enough to attend the meeting in February with you, and really, I thought the input from all the members of the committee and everybody who was visiting was very good and helpful as well. So thank you very much. And with that, we will first ask Ms. Vasquez, do we have any speakers on this subject?
No one has requested to speak on this item, and for the record, no written statement was received.
Thank you very much. With that, we will entertain a motion to, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
I'll make
Happy. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Who made that motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the staff's recommendation.
Okay, great. We have a motion. I don't believe we need a second. So can we please call for a vote?
Just a clarification, Mr. Chair, this
Yes,
does not involve striping of anything at this stage, right? It's just the report and the, sorry, I'm trying to make it a little bit light here. Please continue.
Well, the best part of this report is not only was the report done well, but our city's not going to have to pay for the lion's share of all this work, which makes it even nicer.
Yes. Anytime you can put $1 down and get 9 more, it's probably.
Even though we're probably getting our own dollars back, but we're not supposed to go down that road either. All right, so let's call for the vote, please, Ms. Vasquez.
Commissioner Ferris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hayek,
Yes.
Commissioner Pletcher,
Yes.
Chair Lemo.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, and with that, that brings us to item number 7, which is the status of prior traffic commission recommendations. And Mr. Mashiko, will you be handling this?
Yeah, that's just something real quick that last month or the last time we met, you folks took a look at the Lawrence Drive, Taylor Road intersection improvement plans, and that's the design I think they brought to you the last meeting. It's moving forward. It's almost complete. The design's almost complete. And later, in the summer, we're going to be moving towards the bid process. So that project is going to be moving closer towards construction.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next item would be commission referrals from April 21st, and there were none. And you've all had the chance to see the attached work program and commission schedule. In regards to our work program, are there any questions of staff by the commissioners? Hearing none, we'll move on with item number 10, which is the staff requests traffic commission's input regarding the format of future meetings to continue on Zoom versus returning to the boardroom at City Hall. This is a discussion item, not an item to be voted on tonight. But I think that everybody would like to hear our input so that as the city makes their decisions going forward, they have the benefit of our input. Who would like to go first?
I'll just jump right in. I don't have much to say other than I'm happy to do either way. It'd be great to get back to in person, but I do know that the governor continued provisions of the Brown Act that allow these meetings to continue. So I really am good either way. Whatever staff wants to do, I will support.
Other commissioners? Any comments?
Same.
Mr. Hyatt.
Do we still stream the videos even if we go back live, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we do not allow remote comments. In other words, you have to be at the boardroom to do a public comment. You cannot phone in or use a Zoom.
Okay. I'd be okay if we went back in person, but if we stayed on Zoom, it's fine too.
Commissioner Ferris.
Same.
Well, I would say that based upon past experience, I always like to be in person. However, there's one thing that I do like better about Zoom, and that is it's more accessible to the public. What I mean by that is if mom or dad are doing homework with a kid or having dinner, they can do so until their item comes up, which they usually cannot do unless they have a friend at City Hall that's going to call them and say, okay, you've got 15 minutes to get here, hurry up. So I think that there's a tremendous benefit to the community. That's number one. Number two, I think there's a very good benefit to us and to staff, because in the event we're called away for business or whatever, we have the ability to participate in the meeting the same way as if we were here. Last but not least, I know that many businesses, I can't say most at this time, but many businesses are planning to have a hybrid schedule where they're only going to be in person somewhere between 60 and 40% of the time. Everything else will be done by Zoom. So I tend to, even though I prefer to be in person, I tend to favor Zoom because it allows better access. Also, unlike our regular meetings, a person can phone in and give their comment on Zoom, but they can't phone into a regular live meeting to do that. Last but not least, I think it's also better for staff. I like the fact that staff who travel from different places are not, leaving work at 9 or 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night to head home. Many of which live outside the city of Thousand Oaks. So I am supportive of Zoom. I think what you wanted to hear was everyone's comments so that you can carry these forward in your discussion. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the general consensus. We wanted to get some feedback. So as there's additional discussions later this month or later this summer at the city management level, we can at least present, one of the questions will be, what is the commissioner, what does the commission feel, or what is the desire of the commission? So, I see that we're not strongly in one direction or the other, but there's flexibility, and there are the benefits of the virtual meetings are apparent. And as was mentioned, they're currently still allowed. When that changes, we will take a close eye on, and we'll also evaluate what the overall city's position is. I know the council meetings have gone hybrid, where there's both going on, but there's a lot more moving parts to make that happen. So, David, to chime in.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think there is I concur with all of the comments. I think that we've had here. I think there are definitely benefits to the accessibility. There are, and it has been my experience, not just with this one, but some of the other city meetings that have had the opportunity to participate in, that there are some people who are not necessarily up to speed on Zoom. And for them, they found it to be very limiting in their ability to provide and they find it very frustrating, where they know how to go down to City Hall and be able to go and do that. So there are, for some people, it becomes more accessible, and others, it may seem a little bit less. So I want to make sure we have that full picture in our consideration.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The one thing that I've learned in business, though, which I don't know how much freedom the city has to explore this. We've eliminated a lot of the accessibility concerns in work settings by moving to a Microsoft Teams situation. I mean this with no disrespect to anybody, but for somebody that helped me, it dumbs things down a little bit. It's more obvious of what button to push and how to participate. I also noticed that at the hospital, we're using something called Webinar, where literally you do hit a green button and you're in the meeting, and you hit another green button and you're speaking. So I don't know if there are alternatives that we could use that make it easier or not, but at least you know where the commission stands on this. So with that, I thank everybody for their opinion. We have one more item here, and that is, oh no, we already have this decided. We're going to adjourn. The Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission will be adjourned until 6 p.m. on July 21st. According to my notes, it says either in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor, or in a virtual meeting via Zoom. Hold on just a second. Yes, sir. Commissioner Hyde.
Does this committee have any bylaws or written procedures or protocols that we follow? Like, could someone send that to me? Because I looked on the website, I didn't find anything, and I didn't get anything.
I'll be happy to
Is it
forward
part of
those.
council norms or, I have read them a long time ago.
We have a separate manual just for our boards and commissions.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so, well, and one other quick comment. I want to thank everybody on staff, but tonight, I think I get all my cheat sheet from Mrs. Marcelino. Is that correct? So thank you very much for providing that. And with that, we'll go back to the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission is now adjourned until 6 p.m. on July 21st, 2021 in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor or in a virtual meeting via Zoom. Good night, everybody. We are adjourned.